Yep. Now it seems to be live.
Sound check. 1, 2, 3.
Not yet. Wait.
Yeah, buffering. Yeah, audio seems. Yeah, all good.
Yep,
Are we live?
We are live.
We're live. Good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good evening, and good day. Welcome back to day 5 of the OpenSIPS Summit 2021 Distributed. If you've joined us this week, you know that we have in store for you today a lot of amazing speakers, content, and topics. I want to let everybody know that so far it's been an amazing week. We're going to be closing it up today as far as the speaker portion and the presentation portion, but we are back next week. On Monday, we have a bunch of workshops, and on Tuesday, we have the OpenSIPS training. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Subspace, William King, who had a talk a couple of days ago, which you can catch on the YouTube recordings. Tells you all about all the cool and interesting things that Subspace has been doing. We're happy to have them join us as a sponsor and obviously appreciate everything that they do for us. So today is going to be no different. Like I said, you're going to get a bunch of interesting speakers. We're going to also have the big prize today in the raffle. So for all of you that have been waiting for it all week, be sure that you're here and in the raffle channel on Slack. And also, we'll be closing the day with a panel. So that will be very interesting. Members of different open source projects will be coming together and discussing the symbiotic relationship between open source projects and their communities.
And Alex, it's a right rowdy bunch of people that Bogdan's managed to corral in. So he's asked me to try and keep them in order.
That's what I was going to say. There's only one person in this world, ladies and gentlemen, that actually can keep this crew in order, and that's Mr. David Duffett. He'll be moderating that panel. Look for them at the end of the talks today. David, thank you so much for being here to do that. I know it's a difficult job. I know that it's a difficult job.
It's a difficult job, but I'm happy to try my best, and I'm happy to hang out with you guys and also be part of the community.
So I also want to thank all of our speakers during the week, our speakers for today, and obviously all of the community and members and moderators that have made this possible. It's been a great week, and we look forward to finishing off this week strong. We're starting the day with Mr. Lorenzo Mangani. He's going to be talking to us about how monitoring is boring. He comes to us from the SIP Capture project. Lorenzo, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lorenzo Mangani.
All right, I'll go ahead and try share my screen first. If that works, should be well set. Here we go. Just let me know if I'm sharing right, and I'll get going.
It's looking good, Lorenzo.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, so
Lorenzo, if I might, could you pitch your camera down just a little bit? Actually, the other way. I'm sorry. Pitch it back up.
I'm not going to see myself. I'm not going to see myself, but that's the least interesting part of this presentation for sure.
That's okay. We've got your eyebrows. That's
all right. So welcome everyone, I guess. And first and foremost, thank you for having us. We're aficionados of the OpenSIPS Summit, still waiting for a real one to come and for all of us to get together. But in the meantime, it's always one of our favorite occasions to get together for this and to join the band with our humble presentation today. So monitoring is boring. Let's start from the boring part. So the adjective describes something or someone that's tedious, dull, lacking in interest, but as a noun, it refers to the act of drilling a hole or the hole itself. So we could, twist this a little bit and make it about what we do at QXIP and with our projects. So, when an engineer sniffer makes a boring into the network, you can get a sample to learn about the history of the traffic, protocols, applications, whatever it is, looking at what's in the layers that we have extracted. And then, of course, this applies without modifications. If you're not interested in that kind of thing, you might find this a little bit boring. So monitoring definitely is boring. This is part one of a few presentations that I'm going to do on the subject, mostly because this is a middle year for us. So in the middle of things, usually we're presenting new releases and big stuff. But this time we're more going to take a peek into what we're doing and what we're going to be doing next. So for those who don't know me, I'm Lorenzo Mangani. I'm co-founder and CEO of QXIP, which is the company that I run with Alexander, who's also on the call with us, and he's going to interact and overlap with me when it gets interesting. He's the CTO of the company, father of 4, and a bunch of tiny GitHub repositories. And I spent a good part of the last 10 plus years just watching events, packets, logs, and trying to make it easier for people to work with them. The company that we founded that we run is called QuickSIP or QXIP. It's based in the Netherlands, and we do research and development of open source and commercial monitoring technologies. Just to use a broad term for it. In reality, we run a bunch of micro projects that we'll talk about. We're based in Amsterdam, but we also have operations in Valencia, which is where I am right now, and our team of DevOps, which is scattered all over the world. Bunch of smart guys that get what we do and help us run our operations. We deploy and support worldwide for our projects and products. So we have a bunch of customers that rely on us to help them design, operate, troubleshoot, and make the best out of what we provide them with. And on top of this, we created a nice, healthy, self-sustainable business model with a bunch of great partners that help us make everything possible. And to do so, it's worth mentioning before getting into the technical visuals and so on, we are self-funded, meaning that we're not a project that depends on its community. We depend on it, of course, in terms of the features, what they want to do, how good we are, and everything like that. But financially speaking, we're independent. So we created a model where, like many others, of course, we isolated a few teams that we believe belong in the commercial environment, and we monetize them. So we took 1% of our stack to pay for the other 99, and this is how we've been going and growing over the last few years. The trick and what's important to us is not to bastardize our open source. So we didn't want to make a project that has secret parts or is a subset of something else. So in this entire operation, there is no, let's say, code poisoning. So the elements that we sell commercially don't have pretty much anything in common except the functions that they cover with the open source, which will remain untainted and as is as long as we're alive and hopefully even beyond. Our technologies are designed and developed in the Netherlands, in Europe, and Germany. So we're free of any dependencies on any foreign technology, patents, etc., and things like that, which is important nowadays because there's more and more push from the European Union to support also financially with benefits and other types of advantages companies that create value. I think many of our projects fall within this category. So today more than ever, it's absolutely important. And then again, our Robinhood model, which is the one where, let's say, the rich pay for everybody else to have the open source that they deserve without dependencies on anything. Our projects are many, just a few here. Passive monitoring, the way Alexander and I envision it and the way we want it materialized is really multidisciplinary. So there is no single application or single thing that we need to take care of to make this all work the way we see a good fit. So Homer, of course, is our flagship, our life mission, and the fulcrum of our community. This is what keeps it all together and the reason why we do it. But around it, over time, we have developed other side projects that are not necessarily smaller, but are let's say compensate for certain aspects that a single application couldn't reach. That cannot be like a simple executable that does a million things. It would be bloated, it would be monolithic. We don't like it. So we break everything down into little functions, and we try to make them compatible with what's out there. So not enforcing our standard, but more, trying to merge it into the integration scenario that monitoring offers. So again, Homer is the centerfold, but we have Siloki, which is one of our newest projects, which is basically an API that's compatible with the Grafana Loki API on top of ClickHouse. And this has been initially designed for logs, but as the two ideas evolved together, it became something a lot more powerful that's going to have a key role in our next generation stack. And then we have Pastash, which is our Swiss Army tool for getting data into the platform. So as you all know, HEP is our primary protocol, but that's not it. There's going to be systems that need only CDRs, only logs, only syslogs, only debug, only special formats. So this is where Pastash comes in. It just takes all of this spaghetti and it turns it back into something that we can uniformly index or use in our applications. In this case, I'll show you a few examples on the workshop next week as of how we can use it, but this is how we get compatibility with platforms that don't support HEP natively. And then of course, HEP everything, so Amplify, HEP, Sub, HEP, Gen, HEP, Jack, HEP, Pop, HEP, JS, and there's a dozen more in our repository. We have this gimmick of just calling everything HEP something, which are the satellites around Homer, and represent ways to either query the stack, import foreign data, connect it with something else, and so on and so forth. Those of you that use the project will be familiar with most of those, but if you're not, you can just snoop around our SIP capture and QXIP repository. You'll find a bunch of them, most of which are examples as of how to use certain features. And then we also have some products that you can see at the bottom. This is how we make it all run. This is how we sponsor our employees, our developers, our company, our offices, and everything else without having to depend or ask our users to participate other than with their taste. Hepic is the centerfold, and this is what actually allows us right now to make Homer better. So this is the real-time platform that we sell to larger operators and enterprises. The main difference is in how it scales and so on. But what it really does is it allows us to develop freely and with the power that we need to do so, and then create technologies that we can downsample into the open source integration as they get consolidated. We did App Agent, which is our RTP, RTCP sniffer and recorder. This is the part that everybody thinks Homer doesn't have. It actually does. And we provide it to our subscription customers and to many of our customers that use Epic, but it also works with Homer. And it provides the missing bit, so doing real-time analysis. And then LI Agent, which is just for mention, it's a passive lawful interception agent for certified ETSI integration using X123 protocol that we provide with our partner Utimaco. And this is for compliance with law enforcement when an operator gets too big, which we of course wish everyone to get to. You might get knocked out by the police and they ask you to comply with regulations. And this is how we help projects which are open source based or cloud based get that compliance. So things that are not really general interest, very specific and only relevant for enterprises, business operators that most definitely make money and can help the development. So what's our experience here? The concept that Alexander and I go after is simple. We want to do one thing, we want to do it well. We know that nobody's perfect, and we definitely are not perfect, but we are incredibly persistent. So this is what we decided to do, and we're going to die doing this most likely. So over the years, thanks to this persistence and going and going and going, we went from a little stack to multiple stacks, to from a small, handful of little projects into big ones. Things happen. So we were lucky enough, and we could witness, participate, and resolve problems at a scale that, of course, our lab would never have offered, not even our jobs. And we both work for large operators, but you never get enough of variety, if you really want to understand how to generalize a problem. So with all of those customers and use cases running state-of-the-art infrastructure at massive scale, we had a chance really to see, past what we were doing at the moment and into what we were supposed to be doing next. So the curious design choices that we have and all of the oddities that you see in our software are simply the juice of this experience and what gets us to the next stage. In reality, it's all nice and clear, but we have a different position from other systems which are way more vital, right? OpenSIPS really does something, and when you choose it, it really changes the way you design things and how you're going to evolve them into the future. But we are, way more modestly a monitoring application. We're a piece that can be swapped, and we're only good if we're good. It's definitely not something that would be a deal breaker to be changing in design. So we need to, keep our position interesting, and we compete, unfortunately, with other giants that make, way more complex products and have way more resources to do so. And still, we're denting the market. So our little open source project and our tiny commercial stack are really putting a dent, and we're competing in some cases with gigantic, problems using open source or keeping the open source gates wide open, because the two applications, of course, have everything in common. They're completely unswappable because they speak HEP. So starting from the little projects and the big projects that support HEP, now into supporting people that have audio codes, Genesis, Cisco, Oracle, expensive stuff, we could call it, right? And they still turn to either one of our solutions to watch after them, despite those vendors having solutions on their own. So this is pretty significant, and we got here thanks to open source. And thanks to the projects like OpenSIPS that have supported us and our protocol and our endeavors over, all of these years. We've been around for a while. We conquered many, and we got quite a bunch of critics as well. This is healthy. We even have users that installed our stuff 10 years ago, and they refused to upgrade it because it just works. Classic. You also will have some friends or networks that are still running like OpenSIPS. Same logic, but we believe that things should be lived and should be participated. And the people that actually come and talk to us and interact with us on our channels via forums, issues, chat, or whatever, they know that we're always ready. So you give us a challenge, we jump on to it, as long as we have all of the reasoning and the logic behind it. But those that don't actually miss out on the best part. I think this is in common with any project. It's the humans, right? There's people doing this stuff. Those ideas are not made by an AI. There's some smart guy that has seen something more or less than you have that will give you this different angle on things. And this is really, I think, why I'm doing it and why I think many of us are doing it. And then again, luckily, there are projects that expand our reach, because if we were all by ourselves, I think our forum would be 5-6 people that would continuously disappear for 5-6 new people that would disappear. But with OpenSIPS and other communities that are way more consolidated, we get access to a lot of great minds. But we keep talking and talking, but at the end, once you pick Homer, once you have installed it, once it works, it really gets boring. So it sits there, does nothing, uses a lot of data. You maybe read 1% of it. It doesn't do anything exciting. All of these tables and charts, pretty boring. If it sends you something, it's an alarm, never something nice, never happy birthday. And it definitely can make anything up. So we only succeed if we tell the truth, which is pretty boring. And truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate it. So, we bring bad news to the surface. So, we got to stay ahead of the wave. And to do so, we need to continuously reinvent our product. So what we've been doing this year is really working on the next generation of Homer, which again is going to be based on the lessons learned and the sponsorship of Happy. So a lot of those things actually have already happened and already working, and we're going to be showing you some of those today. But still, the 7 ecosystem keeps moving forward. So we have a team now of 4 people that are fully dedicated to working on the UI, the API, documenting it, and just making it better. So if you didn't upgrade recently, you should. There's better everything, and in the workshop, maybe we're going to take a look at those things closer. And the integration now is incredibly easy. So if you want to plug into the application from your portal, whatever, I'll show you some examples. It's super easy. We have a bunch of new alien integrations for HEP. So as mentioned, Genesis, Audio Code, Sensei, actually Sensei integrated it for real. It's a mistake here. They are HEP. They're not alien. But Audio Code, Sonos, Avaya, and all of those platforms keep growing. What we do with those is parse either custom format, custom logs, syslogs. So we have transformers for each individual format into Pastache, and it just turns it into plain HEP. For some of those, we do what OpenSIPS makes for us. So, in the case of OpenSIPS, we're just doing literally nothing, because in TLS, as per any other protocol, packets will be forwarded and you don't have to break encryption. But with those, monolithic vendors and closed platforms, you can't really do that. So the way we're achieving it is by parsing their debug logs and turning them back into the original packets, reassembling them into HEP, and sending them to a platform. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's incredibly complex, and it goes back to really reverse engineering, but it's good fun, and it works. So the more users we have on those, and most times they will have a good proxy in front, the better. Steer shaken support, which we had prepared months ago. We didn't make it in time for the OpenSIPS because we wanted to be part of the testing there, but we most definitely hope to be next time. Steer shaken support, meaning that if you have invites or messages that have tokens, we can decode those tokens within the UI and show you what was in them. So first layer of validation, and we're looking for users to give us ideas as of what to do with these things. We also have apps up in the platform, which would be able to take those tokens and actually make a query using any of their parameters. So, the next thing we hope users will suggest. We have expanded on the diameter support to keep up, with the GAN. So as the platforms that we're compatible with expand their support for diameter, we got to do so as well. As usual, 2 paths. So still to come, of course, is the internal feeding. So from OpenSIPS into HEP into one of our platforms. But we also have a passive sniffer for diameter, which can decode a good majority of messages that can be also used. So here too, if anybody's interested in joining this chapter or has this type of traffic and wants to invest a little bit of time with us making it better, step forward. HEP Sub, which I'm not sure everybody knows about, it's basically a new type of interactive agent for the platform that can go and get more data. So you open a session, you can take all of the IPs, all of the call IDs, the from user, whatever piece or multiple pieces from the message that we have collected, and they can use it to do a lookup somewhere else. So you can take these pieces, ask an API if this is one of your customers, if this is blocked by API ban, if there's a pickup that you can download, if there's a CDR generated, and so on and so forth. A bunch of use cases, once again, looking for a problem to solve. Last but not least, HFP caching proxy, which is a contribution from Ivica, and it's really nothing short of amazing. So you all know that HEP can be transmitted either over UDP or TCP, but the internet is imperfect. So even if you use TCP and you put all of your care, you might have service interruptions. And since our agents are mostly designed to be remote and satellites, we have a problem in between. So Ivica and his team, which are users of HEPIC, came up with this caching proxy that you can put in between a stream of HEP, and it basically watches the TCP connection and caches locally, and then replays the traffic when the connection is restored in case of interruption. So something really, really useful. I love it that this came from the community before we could even officialize this feature in one of our elements. This is the dream, So I sure, hope for these cases to be not unique, but for sure, fantastic news to announce. Fixing documentation is still ongoing, and in the workshop, I'm actually going to tell the participants how they can help as they learn about Homer in fixing or helping us fix the documentation. Other than Homer and the strict ecosystem, we have the other stuff. So ClickHouse Lucky already mentioned. We are now implementing the 2.x API and PromQL support, meaning that we can do a whole lot of interesting things. For those of you that know Locky, If you like the presentation from 2 days ago or ClickHouse, you should definitely check this out. It's a lot of fun and it does incredible things that I'll show you actually in a bit. Our ClickHouse metrics exporter. So we are now writing data to ClickHouse with the next generation Homer and Happy. And of course, what we want to do is allow people to make the most out of the data that we generate, which means that we have our own query runner that can turn any recurring query into Prometheus metrics that can be just scraped and used. And on the side, this is more of a complement to the stack. We have Node Web Shard, which is our re-implementation of Web Shard, which is basically providing, I would say, a decent feature set of Wireshark in the browser. This is re-implemented from scratch using Angular and the Shark, the API. We did this originally for Kubro. It's using one of their boxes in the EXA, and it's called Omnia series, where they have this onboard perpetual packet capture, and this is the UI to it. And Stethoscope and Stenoread go actually together with it. They're the backend part. So those are pickup SSD table readers, which is the format that's used by stenographer to store packets. So this is also part of the expansion. So we need our tools to talk with other tools. And this is one of the major ones here in terms of communicating with hardware vendors specifically. And then we're also working on a Grafana plugin for HEP so that we can have users, of course, access the data in the database, but also through the API. So making queries that return data directly from the Homer and Happy API is something that we're going to soon be providing users with. And let's see, I mean, it could be, a good one or not, users will tell. Just boring tools. I'm taking a look at the chat to see if anybody has questions or if they want to jump in with something. Otherwise, I'm going to start showing you a few of the things that we're going to be able to let you all do in the future.
So far, it's silence.
We're the first ones.
Yeah.
All right. So what's not boring is data. At the end of the day, this is really the lesson that we learned. So we started building an application that was for engineers. For Alex and I, we're engineers, and we wanted to do our job faster and to be lazy. This was, I think, the initial motivation, right? So Homer and all of our tools were very much carved around engineering experience, getting into the packets, reading the SDP, getting the correlation, doing all of those things together. And we obsessed on that part for a long time, but not seeing where the real value was. Because once we started, collecting this data right and storing it right and having a solid and mature schema, we figured that we were now a data producer. So all of this data, we were no longer just storing, we were actually producing metrics and intel about what we were monitoring that was unique on its own. Part of it, of course, is the media monitoring part, but a lot of it is how we designed, and I hope to get into more detail as of this, of course, in the workshop, because it would take an entire presentation, how we tag traffic. So how can we take a huge pipe of traffic with 10,000 customers inside and manage to tag each and every one of them, where they came from, where they went, with a statistical sense. So giving our customers and users the ability to group by things that are not predefined. So deciding on the spot, what do we want to do with this data, and changing our mind as we go, which is maybe the most important part. So that's where we think the goal is, and this is how we want to evolve our platform, is to be less and less of an interface and more of an intelligent data producer that can do what we do best and then offer it to different platforms. Actually, this is where I'm going. So how are people using it? So I took a little bit of a collection of use cases that we have around, in no specific order. Well, they have a little bit of an order, but it's not going to matter much. But just to show you what we're doing, that's not usual Homer. So opening, looking for a session, clicking it, here it is, zipping by 200K, that's really boring. So for many of our integrations, user experience is really, really important. And we already know that we can sort of establish it just by looking at traffic. If for smart engineers, of course, I can go around, look at all of my invites, figure out how many calls those were, and if they were good or bad or whatever. You might or might not be able to do this without some type of media reports, which is where the new model comes in. So this is from Epic, which is going to resemble a lot what this is going to be in the next Homer. And as you can see here, there's an additional layer. So we're no longer just able to search signaling, we're able to search transactions. So we can now find a call. I can know how long something was. I can know the quality of that call at once. So I can go and I can say, show me the history of somebody just by looking for all of their calls. Those calls are connected to the signaling. The signaling is connected to statistics. Statistics are connected to logs. So it all, plugs into itself. But wouldn't it be awesome if we could do it from another application? Which is indeed now the case. So with the new model and the new platform, we can do basically the same query from Grafana. So I don't even have to go into our UI to use our data set anymore. And this is an example where I can take the same thing, show me what a user has been doing for the last week. How many calls did they make, receive? How many minutes they spent? What was their quality inbound, outbound? Did they make or receive any calls? This one only received them. What was the quality of it? And having access to all of these individual calls at once. So it's the statistical part, it's the CDRs, it's the signaling, it's the data, it's all of it at once. And this is where we think things are going to explode. So no longer forcing people to use what we think is best, but just providing the best access we can provide to the data that matters with models and example that are going to be part of the next generation. So this one, we kind of left it up to the users to generate their dashboards and statistics, and it was a mistake. We should ship with what we think is worth using and what we think the platform is best at representing. Oops, I skipped it. KPIs. So in the original Homer, we were just writing and calculating KPIs as we were going. So we decided what was calculated, we wrote it into a table, and that was it. In the 7th version, we abandoned this approach and we started creating time series, but they were still mostly generated based on our logic. In the new platform, you get all of those standard KPIs, but they're all just queries. So we no longer force anything specific. We just think we reached the right data set that allows us to create everything that we need from the same source. So all of those calculations that we previously had to do in real time and then store into another database, we can now do, and we can change as we go. So the way we extract tags for this time series, or the way we treat those values can change over time if we make mistakes, or if we find that the default model doesn't work for our purpose. So all of the standard KPIs in terms of concurrency, but also in terms of protocol performance and so on, are calculated. And the cool thing is that now that they're calculated, we can throw in some interesting additional features, which previously were relegated to external components. So if we could write the time series, but we couldn't really do the calculations to do anomaly detection as we were just emitting them. Right now, we're going to take everything back into our realm. We're going to be using, and I'll show you how, a different model. And since everything is back in our realm and we have all control over calls, and we know what a call is, and we know what a quality is, and we know what the average of those quality is, we can just straight out do the calculation. So what are the bad calls on my network doesn't require any search. It's the database itself that's going to tell us using a variety of methods. This is just an example using the z-score. So looking at the real average of a bunch of calls over a set period of time, finding the outliers and giving them a name. So the top table actually does the calculation, and the bottom one tells me which user actually was behind it. So this 2.7 was generated by a call center call, and I can know where it is, who it was, etc., etc. We can do the same with everything. So this example again was about MOS, but this could be your number of concurrent calls or registrations, or the number of 401 responses to your invites or registers. Could be literally anything that you're interested in. So we're putting the freedom back into those smart numbers so they can be used for something useful and not not just being looked at. Actually, we don't think anybody should be looking at time series. All of these charts are probably more of a programming tool as we generate the alarms. But if we do a good job, these things will notify you before you go look for them. The trick, of course, is once again grouping, tagging, being able to tell who's who. And also, being in a passive realm, usually we might diverge from what the platforms that we monitor think they're doing. And this is never the case when everything works, but often the case when there are issues and faults. So if something is misbehaving, if something is miscounting, crashing and whatever, you have calls left open, hanging and whatever, our platform does see it. And it will see it also in cases of this being intentional, like, post hang-up fraud and a bunch of other things that Alexander can get into if you want afterwards, are actually caught by the system. So we can have a completely passive look into how the traffic that we're monitoring is users, which are the top callers, call leaves by minutes, by average duration, by the quality of their calls. We're free to define those things without having to agree with the systems producing it. So this is going to work the same whether you use one vendor or 20 different vendors, because we don't depend on them doing anything other than using a standard. Same goes for trunks. So we can define our trunks as IP aliases the same way we've been doing forever. But now with ClickHouse and with ClickHouse dictionaries, we can use them to resolve names for statistics without being forced to tag them ahead of time. So before this approach, we had to decide, hey, I see a packet, I have to decide right now, this is from QXIP Valencia, and I would tag it and write it, and that would be it. I cannot change my mind. With this model, I can change my mind. If that IP at a different point in time gets assigned to something else, I can change the way I'm resolving it into the time series, and I can just make it look correct. And this is huge and something that even way larger platforms are not able to do nowadays. Another cool thing that we can do with this design is track passively session timers. So, with the old Hummer, we don't know anything. We only know the messages. But with this new design and with a transaction in between that can be provided, depending on the platform, by OpenSIPS or whatever the case will be, we can stitch things together and we can start tracking them. So this is in Epic specifically, but I think it would be the same thing in Hummer as well. We can track session timers for registrations, for options, for any other exchange that you have. And count it in real time. So in this screenshot, you can see my test system here, our PBX with 17 devices registered. And every time one of them expires or refreshes or whatever, the number changes in real time. This is a materialized view that was also in the presentation about ClickHouse the day before yesterday. And it's a method of basically producing an output that's just a materialized view of other data that's happening or coming or going from and to the system. So in this case, as those actions get triggered, this counter gets modified, and Alexander can explain it better than I do. But this is the trick, is that now we can set alerts on something that's just a session timer, which was previously impossible. Maybe it doesn't sound like much, but it's pretty significant. And then what everybody really wants is media analytics. So in Hummer, as said, you can have by default RTCP. This is because the clients send RTCP, not because we don't want to get anything else. So most of the RTP proxies that support HEP and back-to-back user agents will only send us RTCP statistics, and this is what we display. But we also have a sniffer, of course, that's able to do the job. And this sniffer can be used with any of our stacks, including Hummer, of course. And we do provide it, again, to some of our supporters or support customers, to people that help us run the business. They have access to the best tools. In the next version, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I think this is going to be a subject that we would like the community to get involved with. We can't just dish it out. Do people really want it? Do they know why? Do they know what they get into if we make this possible? And so on and so forth. It's a big discussion. So in Hummer, this is pretty simplistic. In Epic, this is more what it looks like. So the analyzer is actually producing a bunch of tiny reports over time. that can spot a tiny change or a tiny gap or a tiny issue in a flow. So you can see there that yellow block, it's pointing at a little fragment of time where we had one packet loss and a little bit of extra jitter than usual. This lowered the MOS, but then it went back to normal. So this score, even if it was RTCP, goes back into solid green, which is not the behavior of RTCP for those of you familiar with it. You know, those are counters. They only get worse. You lose one packet, you lose one packet all the way through. So this new mechanism of calculating statistics allows us to make them automatically more reliable. So they're more realistic in terms of how it happens and not necessarily sticking to the protocol. But what if we could just look at all of them? So instead of call per call, we could look at all of our network, all of our IPs, and just juggle through the various options. I want to see the jitter, I want to see the calculated MOS, or I want to see the skew, or whatever else we're measuring with the agents that we have feeding traffic, now can be globalized. So we can look at all of it, and with the tags and with the same dictionary method above, we could translate those things into identifiers and use them for finding anomalies, alerts, or just figuring out which was the user that was having a really, really bad call. If we want, we can also do it between groups. So if we have IP groups defined with this new model, we can see how they're doing between them. This is already available in Happy, and the same thing I think will be the next summer because it's just numbers. So how is this Botauro name doing towards the QXIP and backwards? What is the MOS? And as we can see here, the MOS actually changes. So in a different direction, it's lower. And with this mechanism, it's really, really easy to understand why and where it's happening, and if there's a difference between what the RTP and the RTCP are reporting, and if there's a packet loss, as in this case, we can pinpoint it immediately to a location that we know. So the translation basically allows us to collect generic data and then resolve it to something that's meaningful at the very end, just when you ask for it. So rather than tagging 10 million packets, I'm going to only tag those 5 that you're going to query for and be interested into, which is a lot more efficient and it uses, let's say, this new design to its full extent. Here we go. This is another example. So we can also use the same mechanism to compare, same condition through different trunks. This is a subspace test that we were running with William, and it shows how like a really, really bad test going through their pipe or going through a normal internet suffers a completely set of different damage. It looks like robot wars down there. So really useful, whether you're looking at your own traffic, somebody else's traffic, your test. If you want to see how your trunks are using codecs, which might sound silly, but why not? Because we're looking at what's really in the SDP and not what should be in the SDP. We're able to tell you both what the endpoints will be using or what they were trying to use, what's the distribution, did I really enable Opus for that trunk, are all questions that are super low complexity if you have this type of tool set. Finding good actors, bad actors, who are the best and worst IPs on my system in terms of call quality, and using them for something. If you pair this with HEP-sub and API ban, you can really get like an incredible system that helps you save time if you don't want to investigate something that you already know. Like, why is this call bad? Because all of those calls are bad. Sometimes that's the answer, right? We can also represent things in graphs now. So what is the quality between those groups? And are they exchanging traffic in one direction, in two directions? What is the reciprocal load that they're having on each other? Things that earlier were almost impossible to represent. Now they get pretty simple. And sometimes it's fun. You need to look at data from different angles to get what's going on in certain cases, especially when you don't know what's going on. And then at the end, not really the end, but I need to start running here, logs, events, CDRs, and friends. So we've been talking about packets, signaling, things that come from systems that we control, but then there's everything else, right? When a call hits somewhere, there's going to be a log from the API, there's going to be a CDR generated, there's going to be something that a note that I'm taking on my table. There's a lot of things that might be related to what's going on that are precious when we're investigating it back. So you will all know that, of course, logging has always been part of our platform, but not really this prime citizen, right? It was always relegated into our own formats and our own platform. So if you're using OpenSIPS, you can literally send anything into the platform, any log, any brain cell that moves into the mechanism, you can send an event or a log that tells you how. But what if the system is not OpenSIPS? Then things get difficult. And even if we have log parsers like Pastache that can literally take any format and send it into HEP, people really don't do it because it's a format that's not native. So we should use something that's more common. And what we chose is Loki. And I'm going to drink. Loki from Grafana is a new API and product that they launched, I think about a year ago or a little over a year ago. And it basically brings the Prometheus tagging philosophy into logging. And it was implemented in a way that we really liked, which is write down the tags as a fingerprint, just like Prometheus does, and then store the log with the fingerprint as an identifier without doing anything to it. So there is no processing, there is no parsing, there is nothing at all. There's just fingerprinting and storage. And we liked it so much that we actually implemented all of it. So the ClickHouse engine works exactly this way. It emulates the same design without sharing any of the code with it. So it's a ClearHouse implementation. But it's really because the method was intelligent. So with ClickHouse, this works exceptionally well. So the integration was already in Homer and Epic. So from all of our sessions, there's a Loki GraphQL query builder. This thing basically will take some elements from the session based on a template. Most cases, it's going to be the call IDs, all of the call IDs that were correlated, and we'll prepare a query that can just be sent to get more data. This data, again, we expect to be alien data coming from something that's not strictly related to the voice platform, but could be related to the environment within it happens, or the building, or whatever else is important. Free entry and free access, and I think we did a pretty good job. On the left, you can see our C-Lock implementation, and on the right, you can see the Grafana Lock implementation for a filter query over a week. So we just said, find all calls that contain this string with regex, and ClickHouse returns it in 0.1 seconds, while Grafana Lock takes 4.3, which most people would consider fast. But we're faster. So we're heavily investing, and we're going to be throwing more and more data at this new engine because it just works. And it doesn't just work, with logs. The beauty of it is that we can use it to materialize time series as well. So with the same method, we can create access using the log QL query language, which is well documented again by the Loki project. It's similar to the Prometheus language to some extent. It's super simplified, and here you can see one of our queries. Calculate the average from user to user. So these are dynamic tags that will be used for this query, and calculate the rate of MOS divided 100, resolution 1 minute from any table that I want. So this could be data that we wrote, could be data that another system wrote, could be data that we imported from another database. It doesn't matter. We just form a simple query around it, and there we have it. We can use it. We can use it in dashboards. We can use it for calculations. We can use it for everything that we think people should have access to. And it's really fast. And now the last part, and I'm going to rush through it because I thought I was going to be slower, portal integration. So this is really the last part that we want to share. More and more operators are finally seeing the value of this data for a larger purpose. So at the beginning, they were deploying Homer or any of our solution or other solutions internally just for themselves, serving the engineers. But once this data can get trusted, once this data makes sense, it makes sense also to open it up to customers. Why? Mostly because they can do half of the job for free, right? So if I give my customers access to their data, they already know if the call is good or bad. If they can download a pickup, they can do 50% of the investigation and just tell me, hey, I have an issue with packet 6. So I can save, operators and their support a whole lot of time. And plus, it allows them to literally sell back metrics that they have already collected. So if they already have the MOS, jitter, RTT for every call that goes through their network, why not provide it back to the customers, right? It's transparency. It makes a lot of extra value. And this is why we're seeing a growing number of these inside mission control panels and so on, which use our technologies. And I don't know, maybe many of you are already using this daily. But what we think is that this is also an opportunity for smaller operators to compete, right? This is possible. This can be done. And people love it. So, it doesn't have to be a giant to offer this. So could the next Holy Grail be self-troubleshooting for end users? So moving the responsibility to the others. So just wrapping it up super quickly. So monitoring maybe is not that boring, but it's still boring if we look at the significance of the word. And we got Homer, we got Agent, but most users get hesitant when they get faced with the number of choices that they have today. So Alexander and I thought we were smart. Let's give everybody every opportunity, multiple databases, multiple backends. They're gonna love it, but people hate it because it's too fragmented and they're faced with too many decisions. Which database should I choose? Which time series? What type of server? How much data am I gonna expect? How do I get data in Homer? What is even happening? How do I do this and that? So we know, and the next generation is gonna solve hopefully this problem. So we go back to Solidity. It's gonna be one database. It's gonna be ClickHouse. With CLocky, ClickHouse Keeper, we're gonna cluster it. We're gonna use it for data time series. And that platform already offers all of the ins and outs that one could dream of. And we think Homer users deserve it. So this is where we're going. One data model, predictable. It's easier to calculate the capacity. With this model, if we look at our customers, the next one that comes in is going to have a predictable scenario in front of them. This is what it takes to do 100 calls. It's going to become finally an answer that we can provide. The formats, HEP plus everything else that we can support, backwards compatible. So we're not going to break anything. We're going to make it easy to move forward, but it's going to be worth it. And then, of course, the UI, which is what people will use. We're going to more and more integrate with Grafana. So you're still going to be searching for packets through our UI, but at some point our UI might become a Grafana plugin, and Grafana is already pluggable into Homer and Epic so that you can embed dashboards, widgets. We just talked to its API. So this is going to go more and more and more forward, we believe. And if other platforms take the cake at becoming popular, we will support them too. So Homer 9 Alpha planned for Q1 2022, at least, the initial fully formed details. Of course, if you're not monitoring, don't wait until 2022. Do something now. And on this, I'll leave you with some quotes that didn't age well from the field. So this is lessons to be learned, of course, which hope you guys will treasure. So if you don't have a monitoring system, it doesn't matter if it's ours or somebody else's, but get on it, because one day it's going to be too late and it's going to cost you a fortune to solve something that would be fun. Support open source. Before you ask open source to support you, donate to the OpenSIPS cause, donate to any projects that you use. Help us, and help yourselves, of course, through our software. Thank you for having us.
Wow, that was a quite marathon at the end, Lorenzo.
Well, I look at the clock,
That was a quite
Plenty of time.
as well.
What a tour de force, Lorenzo. I appreciate so much the idea to consolidate and going toward click call centric platform is so nice, and will help a lot all of us when we deal with customers or also when we build our own platform.
Absolutely.
It will be okay. The choice is this one. Let's implement it well and let's interact with it, because actually I don't know for the other guys here, but actually for me it was a little bit mind-blogging that it was so many choices, and also I mean, not you don't, at least me, don't know about some of them.
Exactly. There's a lot of,
maybe I'm missing something that is so wonderful, and I will keep studying all my life. better just give me one only choice.
At this time, I think we found it, and we took our time. So we actually been working on this for almost 2 entire years. But we made this mistake before, Alexander and I, that we see something, we believe in it, we invest everything, and then it disappears, it goes wrong, it changes license. You know, many things can happen. With ClickHouse, we also have a partnership with Altiti, and today we're really, really confident to define ourselves as a ClickHouse shop. So we already have done it in the commercial field. We already have proven this, at large scale, and now we can finally bring it to the project, knowing that this is going to last 5 years without having to change it again.
Cool.
Alex, did I represent everything that you wanted to as well, Alex?
Yeah, it's exactly. It's now on channel. Artem asked if ClickHouse in New Homer will be like a main database, or it still need Postgres. I answered what. In Homer 9, it will be main database with ClickHouse.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to, let's say, be...
Look, this is the same mistake that we are risking doing again, all right? So multiple options means that we're not going to do any of them 100% right.
Yeah. But
so in this case, maybe some people will initially not like it, but I guarantee you when you see the performance and the savings that this brings in the long term, we're all going to be happy. But yeah, it's going to take a little bit of something. But the good news is that ClickHouse has an importer for Postgres, which means that a migration path is possible. And this is exactly what we're trying to figure out at the moment, is how do we go from an existing setup into a dual stack setup and then complete migration to a single engine. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah. But again, we trust ClickHouse. It's a very powerful engine, and it can bring you a lot of new possibilities and features, especially performance, search, etc. It's incredible.
Keep it simple. We always tell our guys, but we forget ourselves. So
yeah, a comma razor.
Exactly. I see Saúl is ready and warming up, and I can wait for their presentation actually next.
Yeah.
So do we have any more questions for these guys?
Nobody mentioned my classic 2017 OpenSIPS t-shirts.
I love it. I love it.
It's a retro.
Yes.
Collector edition.
This is a collector's edition, exactly. It's not
I
even my size.
mentioned a couple of days ago that we should, pick up all the old T-shirts and just make a lineup with, starting in 2016 or whatever, all the way to now.
Now you know who's listening, Bogdan.
I wonder who else would have to listen.
Beauty of packet capture, I guess.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks again for having us, and thank you so very much.
Let's give these guys a round of applause. Thank you so much. Great presentation, Lorenzo. Great presentation.
Great quotes.
As usual.
Okay, everybody, we're going to be transitioning to our next set of speakers. As we do that, I want to remind everyone that Subspace was generous enough to be a sponsor this year. Make sure that you go ahead and check out what they're offering. Again, William King did a talk, I believe it was 2 days ago. It is on the OpenSIPS YouTube channel, and you can check out all of the cool stuff that they're doing over there. Want to remind everyone again to stick around because we have some really fun things to do at the conclusion of today's talks. One of them is going to be the roundtable moderated by our own David Duffett. He's going to try and bring some clarity to the chaos of all these different projects as they discuss, their progress in their communities. And
it's a very tough call, Alex, but I'm going to try my best.
I'm waiting for you to put on the football gear.
American football or?
American football gear.
That's not football. Anyhow. Yeah.
Really? Are we going to get into an esoteric conversation about what football means across the world?
I'm going to mute and let you carry on, Alex.
So let's queue up our next group. They're coming to us from 8x8. They're going to be talking to us about taking SIP Jibri to production. Oana Iank, Raluca Toff, and Saúl Ibarra. are going to be joining us. Are you all there?
Hi, yes, we are here.
Hello,
Yes, we
hello.
are.
Very good.
Hey,
So,
folks.
y'all
Hi
take it
there.
away.
Welcome. So,
Thanks
the
for having
mic is
us.
all yours.
Good. Well, Raluca, thanks for sharing that. Well, welcome everyone. It is an interesting occasion that we are here, not in lovely Amsterdam, even though I hear the weather is not so great. I myself escaped to a more sunny place for a little bit. But nonetheless, it's great to be surrounded by you all. And today, I'm bringing you some fresh blood, some two new presenters to OpenSIPS Summit. I myself have presented a number of times, and in fact, in 2017, I gave the hint of this presentation. It was kind of a third, 2/3 with duct tape to be more precise. It was a way to connect physical meeting rooms that were using SIP to a more modern world where WebRTC is kind of a more used protocol from a browser. Fast forward 4 years, Juan and Raluca have done a great job at actually polishing the turd, making it work properly and making it production ready. Today we're gonna take a step back and take a look at how it got built, the challenges we ran into, and all of it there is to know about SIP Jibri. Without further ado, Raluca, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So as Saúl just mentioned, together with him and Juana, we are part of the Jitsi team within 8x8 organization. And you already heard the Jitsi, you heard SIP Jibri, you may be wondering, okay, what is all about? But we're going to start with the beginning. And this is because in order to understand SIP Jibri, we need to understand where it connects to. And in this case, it's Jitsi. So what is Jitsi? Jitsi, at its surface, it's a video conferencing solution that started its life back in 2003 as a SIP communicator. As WebRTC started to evolve, Jitsi added video conferencing capabilities, and now it has evolved into a complex video conferencing platform that reaches up to 20 million monthly active users. But we think Jitsi is more than this. Jitsi is an ecosystem. It's part of, it contains a set of open source projects that provide state-of-the-art video capabilities and that are easy to self-host. We offer, for example, Debian packages if you have an Ubuntu system, or you can take some Docker images and install them. And of course, you can just take the source and compile it yourself and deploy it in your own infrastructure. Also, on top of this, we provide a set of embedding APIs that allow you to take the video conferencing solution embedded in your platform, add features, remove features, just customizing according to your business needs. But more important, Jitsi as a community is a set of passionate individuals and organizations that are pushing the envelope of video conferencing quality on the web. At its core, Jitsi has three main components. One, for signaling, we use Prosody. This is an XMPP server. Then for media, we use media server. It's called Jitsi Video Bridge. It's a selective forwarding unit compatible with WebRTC that is used for routing video streams amongst participants. Then we have Jitsi Conferences Management component that acts as a load balancer between the participants and the video bridges. But let's zoom out a bit. You can join our conferencing solution using different types of devices, or we call it participants. You can join via phone, and as you remember, Jitsi was first a SIP communicator. So the first client that supported was an audio-only SIP-based client. And our phone participant is powered by the Gigassi component. With the addition of WebRTC capabilities, we added two main types of participants, a web participant and a mobile participant. Both of them are using a JavaScript library called libgtmeet. Our latest addition is SIP Jibri. This is a SIP video participant to our meetings, and we will discuss more about this participant today in our presentation. You will also notice a red rectangle. This is the recorder, or we can call it a live streamer. It does both. And it's in a way a participant. It's more like an observer. It captures the video streams, the audio streams, the entire meeting experience. And it either uploads it to Dropbox or streams it, for example, to YouTube. And it's powered by a component named Jibri. And you will notice that Jibri and SIP Jibri have a bit of a naming in common. This is definitely not a coincidence, and you will find out why. But first, why did we add video SIP in GT meetings? Well, we thought about in-room video conferences. This is the best way to physically scale a meeting if you just join it via a physical room. And in fact, we did build our own custom in-room meeting solution, but it's only useful for new deployments. So you need to buy a tablet, a monitor, you have to install it, and then you're ready to go. But there's already large deployments out there of in-room conferencing solution, and that are mostly based on SIP, and we had no solution for them. So we built SIP Jibri. So how does SIP Jibri work? Well, in order to know that, we need to look a bit in the past. And there is this saying that those that don't study history, they are bound to repeat it. We studied our GT history and we repeat it nonetheless. Otherwise said, if we want to understand how SIP Jibri work, we need to look a bit in the past at the components that inspired it. First, before SIP Jibri, we had the phone participant, the audio-only SIP-based participant, which is called Gigassi. Gigassi is made of two components. One is the SIP user agent that interacts with the SIP participant, and another one is a custom GTmeet client that connects to the process, the signaling server, joins a room, exits a room, and also that is able to send audio streams to the GTmeet, to the video bridge, and will also receive the other participants' audio streams. On top of that, we added a SIP proxy Vox implant. This is a cloud communications platform that we used to use it back then, and we are continuing to use it. Also because it provides us some additional features, such as the hardphone call routing, and the fact that we can mix the audio streams. Before SIP Jibri, we had the recorder, if you remember the red rectangle. Jibri has a special type of GTmeet client. We thought that, okay, with recorder, we want to be able to capture the entire meeting experience. We need to capture the audio streams and the video streams of all of the participants, and also the interactions, such as when somebody is speaking, its video might be highlighted or put in the center. And we realized that the best way to capture the browser experience is to use a browser. So in case of Jibri, the client for GTmeet is actually a browser that we open through Selenium. So through Selenium, we open a headless browser, we join the meeting, then via an FFmpeg process, we capture the screen, and we stream it. We can stream it to YouTube, or we can save it on disk and then later upload it, for example, to Dropbox. And we took these two components and we combined them to create SIP Jibri. And how did we do that? Well, first we started with Jibri, because Jibri had the properties of being able to capture the entire meeting experience. Then we added a SIP user agent. We opted for PJ SIP, that interfaces the SIP caller. Well, that meant that on one hand, we had a SIP user agent that had access to the audio and the video streams of the caller. And on the other hand, we had Jibri that had access to the audio and video streams of the meeting. And all we needed to do is to glue these streams together. And so we did lots of gluing. First for video, we added some more components to enable this. We had two applications. One was PJ-SIP that was able to display the video of the SIP caller, and the other one was the browser that was able to display the video of the meeting. So on a Linux server, if you want to display a user interface, you need an X server. We opted for XORG, and we installed two servers, one for PJ-SIP and one for the browser. Then, in order to capture the displays, we used two FFmpeg processes. And finally, the output from the FFmpeg processes, we sent it to two video loopback devices. So we had one video loopback device to capture the SIP caller video and set it as input to the browser. Otherwise said, the browser joined using as camera that video loopback device. Then we had another video loopback device to take the video from the browser and send it back to the SIP caller. For audio, we did a similar setup. It's a bit simpler though, but we also relied on loopback devices. We installed two ALSA loopback devices, and one is taking the audio from the browser and send it to the SIP caller, and another loopback device is taking the audio from the SIP caller and sending it as input to the browser. That is a lot of gluing on our side, and you might be wondering why. Why did we choose this solution? And I'm gonna let Juana tell you more about it. And she'll also take you through how we took all this glue and we put it to production. Juana?
Thank you, Radka. Now, let's see why we built it this way. Well, we wanted our in-room users to have the same experience as the users that are joining the meeting in a browser. We want them to see other users' virtual backgrounds or a shared YouTube video. And in order to accomplish this, we reused the architecture that we use for live streaming. So SIP Jibri was born. In fact, we capture everything that happens in a meeting and forward it to a SIP device. But we also need a client, a SIP client, because it needs to talk to the SIP devices. And our SIP client of choice is PJ-SIP. It required a minimum amount of changes in order to make it work. Most of the changes are already upstream. For example, we force PJ-SWAT to start in full screen mode, or we exit with different exit codes when the call ends. And that's why we had to build our own version of PJ-SIP. Okay, but how did we take it to production? First, we needed a SIP proxy to help us with basic NAT traversal and signaling in general. And we started by having OpenSIPS for that. And for the media part, we continued to use VoxImplant as we were already using it for classes. And this worked perfectly. But the OpenSIPS instance was something that we would have to maintain and scale. So we decided to outsource the scaling part to Vox and use VoxImplant directly. But there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to build this on top of OpenSIPS itself. It's just that this was our choice. Okay. After the call is routed to Vox, we do some basic conference checks, and we also play some IVRs. For example, if the meeting has a passcode, we play an IVR asking for it. Then we connect the call to an available SIP Jibri. And now I'll focus a bit on the selection mechanism. How do we select an available SIP Jibri? Well, we have a pool of SIP Jibris deployed in Oracle, and we also have the selectors that knows the state of the SIP Jibris, because each SIP Jibri has a sidecar that's running on the instance, and it's constantly pulling the state of the instance. So, and it's sending it to the selectors. So in the selectors, we have a centralized state knowing which Jibris are available in use and so on. And from Vox, we go directly to the selectors, select and start an available Jibri. For the Jibris, we also run a custom autoscaler service. So because in Oracle, you don't have the option to scale based on custom metrics. And we want to scale based on availability because we want to have the right resources at the right time and to also control the cost. So we built our own autoscaler. Of course, we also had some challenges while building the infrastructure. And one of them is related to the different SIP flows we had to support. For example, on a SIP invite with delayed media negotiation, the initial invite does not have the media traffic destination on it. And we have this flow where we have to play an IVR right at the beginning of the call. But how will Vox know where to send the invite if no media traffic destination is set on the initial invite? So it doesn't know where to send the media. In order for the caller to hear the IVR, we have to first answer the incoming call and only then connect the second leg of the call, so connect PJ swap. And the fact, this means that we are not able to use the back-to-back user agent model in Vox because it doesn't allow to send DTMF while you're in the early media stage. So not until the connection is created. Another challenge we had was related to the MTU size being too large to be sent over UDP and received unfragmented by Jibris in Oracle, because there's a limit of 1460 bytes that can be transmitted at once. And you know, there are messages of larger sizes, so we had to force TCP connection between the SIP proxy and the SIP client, and that's only for the signaling part. We also had packet loss because many legacy SIP endpoints don't have RTCP feedback capability. And for video, a single dropped RTP packet can render the video stream unusable. So we had to change PJSIP to request keyframes at a regular interval to try and compensate for the eventual packet loss. And those are some of the challenges we had, but we overcome them and we are now in production. And as you may know, we launched GC as a service known as Jazz that allows developers to build and deploy custom video solutions. So you can use it using Jazz. You have the SIP feature built in, so you can either use it this way, or you also have the option to run it on your own infrastructure. So build it yourself. Hope you liked it. Now it's time for Q&A. Thank you.
All right.
Questions? I know there's some out there.
Do you have some, Alex?
I have one.
I knew it. I knew it.
If I remember,
And there are some on the Slack, but
okay.
go ahead, Liviu, and then we can read on Slack.
Thanks. If I remember correctly, the PJ SIP and PJS UA, whatnot, they are mainly written in C++, but then they have all of these Python wrappers on top of them, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mainly...
And my question was, which one did you use? Like, did you hook into the low-level C++ or did you use the Python?
That's a good question. We are currently using PJ SUA, the command line client built around PJ project, which is written in C. All our changes and patches have been done at the C level. In the future, so as you mentioned, they do have the capability to do multiple language bindings. I think the thing that they use is called SWIG.
Right.
And we think that one extra step that can be taken here is to actually use the Java bindings for Swig to integrate better,
Gotcha.
because Jibri is written in Kotlin. And so it would be a little bit more integrated, but so far we have been doing pretty good by just having a modified command line client that is launched, does its job, and then dies.
Awesome. Thank you. That was the perfect answer.
Cheers.
There's a question on the YouTube. Will it replace Jigasti at some point? Maybe that's Jitsi.
Jigasi is the thing that does the audio part. And I would say it's unlikely because of how resource hungry this thing is. It's designed around video. That's why it launches Chrome and captures its output and everything. Versus Jigasi, it does only audio, and it even does audio forwarding. It doesn't decode, so we can have a lot more calls per box than we can handle with Jibri.
And then there's another question on the Slack channel. Is it already available for download?
Yes, well, the code is there, is open source, so it can be downloaded and ready to use.
Maybe later, not right now, for the sake of the audience. We can share some link for downloading, or where to browse for downloads.
Sure.
We can do that.
Cool.
Okay, let's give these guys a round of applause.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. All three of you, an amazing presentation. Thanks for bringing us this wonderful information.
Thanks, folks. Happy to
And
be
if
here.
you have any other questions for them, please do use the Summit chat channel. I believe they'll be in there to answer any questions that you have.
Yep.
And we're going to roll right into our next presentation, I think. Unless Bogdan has anything that he wants to interject.
Let me think. When you were mentioning before the subspace, I wanted to mention on the bottom of the slide, you see there is a code, and also William mentioned that if you use that code, so if you register, like I'm actually pre-register for for trial, with that code, you'll get some priority in terms of getting you set up. So there are actually some actions points that you can do with the information from the slide. So just use that code, register, and as William said, you'll get quite some priority in order to activate and test your subspace account.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go right into our next presentation. We've seen him here before, folks. He's back to talk to us about something new. Mr. Liviu Chircu from the OpenSIPS project. He's going to be talking to us about Diameter and OpenSIPS 3.2, unlocking the IMS world. Did I butcher your last name?
Yes, indeed.
Chircu.
Again.
Ki, like kimono, right? You know what the
keep
famous...
off my back.
Yeah, exactly. That is it.
Okay,
Hi everyone.
Liviu, take it away.
Let me get my setup here, and it's interesting that I'm beginning 5 minutes earlier. That's a start for the summit, and I'm not sure how fast it will go. We'll see. But like Alex said, we will be talking about Diameter, or rather, I will be doing more of the talking, and how we provided it in OpenSIPS 3.2 and what is the roadmap for the future to come. About me, as you already may have heard on Tuesday, I'm an OpenSIPS developer, maintainer, and split my time between the work on the open source side of things, as well as our consultancy company. And I wanted to start with a quick introduction into Radius and Diameter, just in case there are any other people like me watching this that, to be frank with you, I got into these protocols like half a year ago when I started the work on diameter. So let's see what they're all about. Radius is older than, so almost as old as I am. It started in 1997, and its main purpose is to be a AAA protocol. What does that mean? To authenticate whatever users or other devices. It's generic, right? So to validate credentials, to authorize, validate permissions, or to account various events, just log them. It is simplistic in nature. You may even compare it to HTTP to some degree. There is a request, and then there's a response. It's nothing more than that. In fact, I have here a packet capture of a diameter packet, sorry, a radius packet. And you can see it's pretty, it has some identifier, the code of the request, and then a bunch of ADPs. And that's all as far as I'm going to go with radius. No more reasons to talk about it. We are trying to replace it with diameter. What is diameter? It's something they realized they have to do 3 years down the road, when they figured out, right, already having deployed or seen radius deployments for almost 6 years, they started seeing the holes in it and things that could have been done better, and so on and so forth. So they came up with diameter as a next generation to the predecessor radius, and also as a clever naming pun, right? Radius and double it to get a diameter. And what they added on top of it is more on the peer-to-peer side of things. So on a lower level, diameter all of a sudden solves problems such as retransmitting a request when the remote agent is down to some other diameter agent or node. It also uses more secure transports, such as TLS over TCP, not just, I'm pretty sure, the only protocol by design that Radius was made to use. It also defines the idea of multiple roles that a node can fulfill. It can be a proxy, a redirect, a relay, or a processing node. With Radius, that was, you would simply come up with those terms on your own. There was no specification for them. Also, they improved the pluggability of new agents, where you don't have to configure both the destination software and yourself in order to interoperate. The peers can now, there is a specification for auto discovery and kind of like minimized configuration in terms of peering. And speaking of peering, they also defined this idea of capabilities, where diameter agents have a certain exchange flow during their initial session establishment. I should have put up a slide with this. Basically, there are a few requests that they exchange in the beginning, the capabilities and the CER, the connection establishment request. But the nice thing about this is that it's backwards compatible with Radius. So they made it so there is an easy way to transition, having with all of that infrastructure that was deployed in the years of Radius. So they tried to offer this path of upgrade. But as we all know, Radius has kept being popular for well over 10 years, starting 2003. And it is only maybe in the recent years that diameter adoption has started to go up. With regards to diameter packets, here you can see the backwards compatibility idea. It's kind of the same thing. We have maybe a few extra headers like these flags and the application ID, whatnot. But at the end of the day, you still get a list of AVPs containing your desired command or request that is coded into this single identifier here. In this case, it's the multimedia authentication command, code 286. I'll talk a bit about these codes in a bit. And what do these AVPs look like, right? Because I've been talking about them all this time. First of all, some of them are, if we look at the message structure, some of them are fixed. This means that, for example, this session ID, it must be the first AVP in the packet. Okay, this is the specification after all. Some others are just mandatory. You just have to make sure to include them. Some recommended practice is to keep them as much as possible towards the top. And then there's the optional ones that, as you may have figured, they don't necessarily make or break the request. They just change its semantics. Maybe in some cases they can be useful, or depending on your specific application. And as far as what these AVPs can hold, they can hold the basic kinds of data, I guess, like strings, small integers, or 64-bit ones, signed or unsigned, even floating point numbers. And this is an interesting one. An AVP can hold an array of inner AVPs, right? So it can be made recursive, like a nested set of AVPs. Once you work a bit with diameter, you will start noticing in Wireshark or in your captures these header bits. Also in the documentation, if you browse libraries or the online docs from diameter, and these there are 3 possible header bits, and one of them indicates whether you're dealing with a request or response. The R bit, this one is whether the request is proxyable or not, and this one could be useful. The error bit, it obviously gets set when the reply is not a success class of reply. And then there's a set of flags for each AVP. So this is going a bit lower on a lower level. So AVPs can be made to be vendor specific. You will see this with maybe some hardware made by various manufacturers. And the ones I talked earlier, where some of them are mandatory here, some of the AVPs, that will also be marked with the mandatory flag. So, you will see that flag being set, and the error bit says that the result code AVP is of the error class. Also, in terms of IDs and things you will be encountering are the application IDs that each message represents. If I go back to the packet capture a bit, here we have the application code 6. So the our multimedia authentication request is part of the SIP application specification, RFC 4740, which is numbered 6. So here, actually, one of the applications we've provided in 3.2 uses this code, and the other one is the accounting, which follows or implements a bit of RFC 6733, the part where you handle the accounting request and its response, of course. Of course, there are tons of other applications you can be building using diameter, and each of them are carefully specified in the RFCs listed here. Of course, there may be even some vendor-specific ones, right, which haven't yet been registered with the IANA registry. And also a useful registry to keep track of is the one which tracks possible responses from given by your application. And because of course it would be nice to make it as compliant as possible and give a proper response, right? In our case, where we do the authentication, right, and respond with a 2006, it is more compliant to do so rather than also responding with a success response, right, which would have worked. But let's say 2001, right? So it's correct, but you could make it more compliant, let's say. And I also highlighted some of the responses we've used in 3.2, and as you can see, there are only a few because the set of applications potentially using diameter is absolutely huge. And all of them are listed in this registry I've been talking about. You can find here all the codes that the result code AVP may hold. And for some AVPs, they have like they act as enums, and they only accept like an array of specific values. Same goes with the flags, app IDs, command codes. There is a lot of information on this registry, and yeah, it's a great lookup tool, especially when you're building these applications, because otherwise, there is no other place to go to, frankly. They aren't. It's not like the whole internet takes the time to write these things. You know, it's pretty niche. Let's say. So moving forward with what we thought about when we had to integrate all this, right? We had one of the first questions was, okay, we have to build this upgraded radius peer and build all of that peering logic, the proxying, the message queuing, message retransmission, TCP, TLS. It's a huge volume of work. And, you know, being the talented open source team that we are, why not reuse some other project, right? That they already put in the work to do it. So that's how we came up with Free Diameter, which is an amazing project, and I would like to thank them once again for providing this awesome set of libraries. This is their website, maybe useful, the headline on it, where they say that it's an extensible platform for deploying a diameter network for AAA needs, whether you're involved in research or a network operator. So it's not just a toy project. They actually had in mind right scenarios where their code actually gets deployed to production systems. Of course, they still kept their website on HTTP and didn't move forward to HTTPS, but I guess that's on them and we shouldn't judge them too much. How did the integration look like in OpenSIPS? Sorry, that's a couple of slides down the road. First, a couple of stats on the project. It's pretty old, actually. They started in 2009. It has roughly 1,000 lines of code. It's mostly written in C++, but sorry, it's in C. I should remove that. They have slowly dwindled down in activity. However, there is a nice piece of news on the website that from a couple of months ago, actually, that they finally moved to GitHub. They were using Mercurial previously. And still speaking a bit about the project and how widely used it is and what kind of resources you can find around it if you're trying to build an application based on free diameter. There is quite a bit. There are all sorts of presentations, talks that Mr. Sebastian Degugy gave. I'm not sure if I recall other authors. I think he's the main author of the project. There are also some guy wrote a Docker script for it. They also wrote a paper, which I found that to be pretty cool, describing general architecture of the free diameter and what is it good for and what they target on using it at. Sebastian even gave a talk about it at IETF meetings. So you can see that there is quite a bit of involvement. I guess there was, because this dates back to 2010. But still, those were some good years. And it's not only talking about the past here. It's I also found a reference where Intel actually plans on that there are. I may be talking out of my league here, but there is this Open Mobile Evolved Core working group that are pushing towards enabling 5G, so on and so forth. And they made a presentation, and probably they also have, I'm pretty sure they have some business plans here. Just 1 second. I think there are some messages on meeting, and just making sure there is no questions. Okay. They seem to have forked this free diameter and put it on GitHub, right? 1 year before they actually moved to GitHub. And yeah, but I looked at the repo. They made just 4 commits on top of it. So just as fast as it started, it already seems to have dwindled. But anyway, it's at least it's good to know that people are there is awareness around free diameter. So that was great news for me. And then, right, so as on a high level, if you're going for a diameter implementation, you have to keep in mind that you're going to have to solve all of these 3 layers, right? There is this peer state machine layer that it is actually what diameter adds to the table. Then there's the parser layer, which in a way, if you had radius, you already have it. And of course, this is these are all of the applications you build once you have the support. And as I've highlighted with purple here, why not have both of these just by using free diameter? So that was a great news for us. Actually, they package the project as 2 libraries. This one is FD Proto, which stands for Free Diameter Protocol. And that is delivered via a certain package. And the lower one, the peer state machine, has the core library, again, on packaged into another one. And these packages start being available on the more recent Debians and Ubuntu distributions. So if you're running maybe on Ubuntu 18, which is not that old, to be frank, but you won't be able to benefit from free diameter. So it's good to see that it's getting traction, right? So this just means that there is more and more awareness around it, and more people and all operating system maintainers and packagers are realizing that hey, it's more than worth providing the packages for it, which is great for everyone. A quick look. I'm not going to go into the C API that low, but maybe just a bit of concepts that might be useful if you're building anything here. The protocol side of things gives you all kinds of primitives on initializing the support, debugging your code, there are lists, dictionaries. I guess these are a mixture between both diameter concepts, right, per the specifications, and abstractions of the library, but nevertheless, it also helps you store the AVP values and build and parse your messages. So this is as far as building and managing your. So for example, here, what do I mean by dictionaries? It is a dictionary of AVPs, right? Think of all those codes that I talked about earlier, and the free diameter has to know about them somehow, because otherwise you will tell it, hey, can you put the command code, what was it called? Result code, AVP, and it will say, I don't know, it's an unknown AVP to me. So you have to pre-populate these dictionaries in order for it to build the messages you want to build. Also, maybe I could have put up the radius configuration file in OpenSIPS, because I've made the diameter implementation to be also compatible with that file. So it will pick up all of the AVPs you previously defined using radius. The diameter one will be able to parse them as well. And the other library, the lower level one, right, which handles the state machine and the sending and receival of the messages, also queuing, also has some nice abstractions available for us, and pretty big set of functions. I think it's actually slightly bigger than the previous one in terms of volume. So all kinds of sending, routing, events, and so on. Also parsing of the configuration file. For example, if you want to make some extensions to it, you would probably want to look into this class of functions. And let me show you how it all plays with and how it looks like in OpenSIPS, how the new module turned out to be. Right, because in OpenSIPS it acts as a client to a diameter server, typically. In IMS networks, maybe it will sometimes even act as a server, but that's for another day. So we have this generic AAA API that each of the clients implement, right? The radius module, and it's the shared library that it uses. It's the RAD CLI package. This one's been around for quite a while. It's since OpenSIPS 1.6, and I'm constantly seeing feedback on the mailing lists that people are still using it. I think even, I'm not sure I remember any emails from this year, but I'm pretty sure last year someone was talking about it. And
yeah, somebody actually posted a pull request to add radius or improve some radius support in
yeah, so
VA.
It's,
yeah, people still using it.
It's still using it even after 20 years. So it's yeah, it's tough to.
But it's terrible protocol. Terrible was whatever.
Yeah. And this is the new diameter client, and it using the excellent packaging that is available for free diameter, and this one's available from 3.2 releases and above. On the server side, it's also interesting to see how they've architected things. Just to close out the client side, my feedback from the developers and how they've made both the C API and the packaging around it is excellent. So I would give it a straight up 9 out of 10. So congratulations to them. On the server side, also they did a good job where they made it really easy to build up applications and integrate your client, right? Because maybe you have some AVP you want to include in the message as a client, but you want it to also get processed on the server. So the question is, where do you put that logic in? So what they gave us is very similar to OpenSIPS, right, where you build these shared libraries, and they are dynamically loaded on startup. You can load as many of them as you want. And they even have this cute naming convention where the apps that do some processing or play with the diameter packets start with app underscore. DBG, of course, these ones are for debugging various things. The dict ones are just static dictionaries of MEPs that you can load up as many of them as you need. For example, on this one, on the DCCA, which is the diameter credit control application, well, if you're not doing any billing, why would you load this dictionary, right? Who cares about those AVPs? So on and so forth. And the RT ones are for routing. So what better chance for us to build the logic than to have our own application in free diameter, which we named app OpenSIPS. Initially, I considered going for app SIP, right, and using what they already had there. But I didn't want to get into. So first of all, the app SIP is flagged as in under development or something like that in alpha version. It's not parts of it are not complete. It has a big to-do file. So I didn't want to get into adding further customization there and ending with a patch I have to maintain and or maybe a pull request or stuff like that, and also risk having to make something too OpenSIP specific into a generic app such as AppSIP. So I just said that whatever functionality we want to build into free diameter from now onwards, we just build it into app OpenSIPS. And here is where we placed it. It's actually hosted on the OpenSIPS project, which is nice in the sense that we don't have to deal with pull request acceptance and having to go back to their side for each little change we make. Here we can just use it, and I guess you could make an argument. So no, let me rephrase that. For now, maybe it's best to keep it this way, but maybe once it becomes stable enough, probably the right way is for actually to make a pull request and maintain it there. That would be even better, because it will get picked up by the packaging, right? Because right now, being so early in the development cycle, you have to build it by hand if you want to make the integration with OpenSIPS. So this is the server side of things. And speaking of server side, the running daemon is called free diameter D, which is pretty useful. And it, of course, these are some typical configurations. It might be useful to mention that it mandates TLS. So even if you disable, take for example here where I define my peer, right? I tell the server that when it boots, it has to establish a peering connection with this client diameter.test domain on port 3866, but with no TLS. What does the server do? It requires me to give it the credentials, right? A PEM and a key, just so it can start. It will not start if you don't give it some certificate. So I found that pretty interesting, because in theory, the spec does say that this should be the default behavior. It should go via TLS. So at least they made you plug in some certificates. If you don't want to use them, it's your job, but you have to set it up before it can boot. And here, it's also interesting. We load two shared object files. They call it, so in free diameter, they call them FDX, which stands for free diameter extension, but it's just an SO file, just to add more confusion. And one of them is the dict-sip, which actually comes from the packaging. It's from USR-lib. And the other one, the app OpenSIPS, is custom built. So a bit of more work to be done for now until there is packaging available, but still there is a full guide on how to build it as part of the tutorials on the website. So I don't think you will have much trouble building the app OpenSIPS within the Diameter source code project, right? Because you have to move over there and build it. So that's as far as the integration goes and how the architecture looks like. Let me show you how the first applications turned out to look like, because and the first one will be the digest authentication. And if you remember, I was talking about this API header file. Sorry, I think I saw a question. No. So what we had to do here was to implement the authentication API, which pretty much consists of a couple of messages, the creation and the destruction of the message, all in between, for example, where you append each AVP, and that should, I guess I could have added that as well. Anyway, so there are a handful of functions that were implemented, and mainly they are used by the auth AAA module. So this also means that the diameter, the radius module is still functional, right? We just worked on one side of the implementation, and everything else still works just fine. Okay, how the interaction looks like with the server. We have the module here, which will build a multimedia authentication request, and it will expect a multimedia authentication answer. This is the typical exchange you will see in Diameter, the R and then A. That's even the accounting request is ACR, and then there's ACA, the answer. And yeah, both are both the client side and the app OpenSIPS acting as the server side. They're both powered by the same set of libraries, but each working within their respective frameworks. And also, I thought it would be interesting to mention the sending process, right? Because all of it is delegated to the free Diameter core. And here is a depiction. I just shamelessly stole it from their paper from 2012, where they describe the architecture. There are actually quite a bit of threads happening, and these are forked by the library on startup. Actually, in the earliest startups of OpenSIPS, when there is just one process, that's when it creates all the threads, and then OpenSIPS resumes forking the remaining of its processes.
I have a question, Liviu.
Sure.
And, so does it mean you're creating connection from every process, essentially?
No, because the threads. Oh, I see what you mean. So, but if you fork a process, I don't think that all the threads get duplicated, right? Or
no, they will. Well,
no,
it depends actually. Usually, you do it. You start your threads after you fork. But anyway, I was just curious. So it basically means if I have like 10 OpenSIPS workers, each of them will connect to the Diameter, right?
I would say no, because there will be a single. So all the connections don't happen from processes; they happen from these threads, the routing in, out, and
yeah, but all those threads will have, you will have essentially set of threads per each OpenSIPS process. So if there is 10 OpenSIPS process, there will be 10 by whatever they have.
Yeah, 10 by 4. Yeah, they have like 4 threads, 3 or 4 threads.
Yeah, so it will be 40 threads. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
It can be. Yeah, this might be a bug actually. Yeah. I'll have to double check.
Well, it's not a bug. It's just the architecture of the library.
Yeah, but yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. Most likely that's how it works.
I think Alex is already looking at us a little bit.
I am looking at you.
No. Yeah. So it might be what's. I'll have to come back to you.
I'm watching you, Liviu.
So each thread manages its sending queue and also the outbound threads watch the incoming queue, and those ones watch the outbound queue, and that is pretty much how they play together. And here you get an idea for what I'm not sure. I think I've lost the flow here. 1 second. Why did I put it twice? Oh yeah. What we can look a bit closer into how request looks like and what kind of useful authentication information we can include there. I think I kept my window too small. Okay, now I can see it as well. So here, for our purposes, we have to include what? Maybe the username, realm, and some the nonce maybe. So the backend can do the check against the database. Also, the AAA auth module include this weird Cisco Systems AVP that I had to propagate further because I wouldn't want to break compatibility with Radius, and better to not touch it and keep it there. And the reply is pretty straightforward. You get the success answer, the 2006, and it's an event. I'm not sure if they show it here. Sorry, I think I'm mixing it up with the counting. I'll get back to this one. Yeah, there is no other interesting info here. There is just also you could. This one is a feature request added at some point in the past for the Radius module that some people wanted to have the call ID attached to the authentication diameter exchange so they can correlate with the accounting record. So that is still there, of course, because the API is the same. So that's as far as the accounting goes, the authentication goes, and on the accounting side.
One of those people actually.
Oh, cool. And for the accounting, a similar set of functions. How do we create a diameter accounting packet? And so, because we expect the API to be called by the accounting module, there is no other module pushing accounting messages into the API. And the exchange will be pretty similar. There are ACR, accounting requests, and accounting answers between OpenSIPS and the diameter daemon. Okay, so that's kind of what we have right now. We have pretty much gained quite a bit of experience around the project, how to work with it, with the library, and how to make stuff work with it. So now the question is, okay, what is there in store next? How do we build maybe more IMS capabilities or open the doors for developers to build these capabilities? I put up a slide or a few slides so we can talk a bit about what IMS is, including myself, because I'm still learning about all of this. It's not like I'm in any position to teach you too many things about it. It is, for the most part, an architecture guide for how to build VoIP services and platforms, because all of these architectures that we're building, even though the protocol is standardized, maybe the architecture is not, and with each platform, so rather it has its own specific quirks. So IMS standardizes this problem to some degree, and they also say that their main goal actually is not this one, rather to achieve convergence between fixed and mobile telephony. I think that's specifically the handover part. But anyway, the working group working on IMS is pretty much the 3GPP. And these are a couple of diagrams for how their target architecture, right? This standardized architecture looks like. And there seems to be a lot going on. There are a lot of these components, the CSCF, PI, PCSCF, PGCF. There is a lot of complexity in here, and each of these components, right, they talk to each other either with SIP or with the diameter. That is the most useful thing to get from this. So we have to have this software that we can. This is another example. So it's kind of the same thing. We have all these servers, clients. I guess to this point we can call them agents because they can be both server and client, and they deliver the service. This is the home subscriber server, HSS, that stores the location data. Then there's the AS. I'm not sure if I can see it here. Oh, the AS sits on top, and this delivers the SIP service. So for the most part, we already have many of these components in our platforms. This is the MRFC and MRFP. I think they handled media, MRFC, media resource function, and controller and processor. So that's what I'm saying, that all of our platforms already have these, but in our kind of ways of seeing things, and rather than referring to these terms in a standardized, unified manner, the IMS way of seeing things. Just to complete the picture, let's go through all of them. As you can see, they see most of them as functions, right? Which is a higher level of seeing things. We pretty much think of them as servers rather than network functions. And this one function is doing is serving calls. One of them is interrogating, breakout to gateway, right? And a lot others follow. So what kind of approaches we have to building all of these functions? One approach could be to make a module for each of them, right? We would have, just like we added the diameter module implementing the API, now we would have an IMS, PCSCF, SCSCF, blah, 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 right? We would have all of these network functions implemented as modules in OpenSIPS, and they would deliver the IMS support. Of course, there are all kinds of pros and cons here, unobvious. So let's start with the pros. It could be nice to have all of these functionality already available, right? To use them and build a platform just by some nice functions available in the script. But let's think of a disadvantage. What if I have some of my own vendor AVPs, or maybe I need to make some small tweaks into what diameter packages this CSF module builds. So then you would run into some incompatibilities, right? So as another approach, what if we put all of this complexity to the script developer and rather provide just a primitive for you to build a diameter message in the script? For example, here is how we would use the JSON module to build some JSON encapsulating a, this is actually the MAR request used for authentication. I'm not going to put all of these, I'm just going to put, also this one is pretty bad because we're trying to build a request and I'm starting with the result code, which is the first AVP I could think of. But anyway, let's move past that. We have the command that we're trying to build in the request, and then the AVPs with the payload for that processing logic. And then we pass it to the send message function, the diameter send message, and that's how you do a diameter request. Of course, there would be some access to the reply. Maybe it's async, and you get called in a reply route, and so on and so forth. As a pro here, this is probably the most flexible way of providing this, let's say, generic IMS support. But the obvious con is that all of the logic, right, all of the IMS diameter exchanges have to be built and reinvented by each developer of an IMS system using OpenSIPS. So, right, maybe a hybrid approach could be also an answer, right? Where we also provide this way of building some custom logic in case you need it, but also some, let's say, repeatable functions that people don't run into many incompatibilities with, and they all look the same on all platforms, and they feel the same. So it would be nice to have a module that uses them. So kind of this is what we're thinking about in terms of IMS. And of course, it's not like B is that difficult to provide. So in my opinion, this would be an absolute hands down first thing we need to do next, right? Just provide the generic support in the script, and maybe as everyone starts playing with it, maybe some common network functions will start shaping up, and then we can package them into modules as we go along. So that was kind of it. As learning resources, don't forget that there are quite a few materials on this topic. There's a blog, there's module documentation for the diameter module, and there's also a full tutorial on how to set up both the accounting and the authentication through diameter. And as conclusions, yeah, this is what we've brought and what we plan on doing further. The integrations, the IMS functionality, and we would most appreciate. So this is the time for you to step up and let us know what is it, how does it look, and what would your IMS needs look like? Because starting from those, it would give us a great start on how to continue further on this endeavor on our side. So thank you for your attention, and let me know if you have any questions.
I have a question. Liviu, did you speak to to Shlomi in course of this work at all?
No, not yet.
Okay, okay. Because he has some pretty bright young guys in his Kiev office working on diameter support, or at least looking on that end. So he should probably get you in touch with them. They might help you with testing or something. He even has some toys set up.
That would be great as well, because it's so. It is a bit strange to be both the client and the server. You know, you're pretty much going on a I don't know. You're blindfolded. You don't know if you're going on the right way.
But Max, as I said in the first day in the keynote on 3.2, right now we are, let's say, trying to build some traction or to see if there is any kind of traction to a certain point into this IMS topic. I mentioned something about the deadlock in terms of should we do it or not, support for IMS into OpenSIPS, because you know, if we as a developer, we do not mention like, okay, we intend to do IMS, definitely no one will come and look for IMS into OpenSIPS. And if there is no one coming and looking for IMS into OpenSIPS, basically, again, there is no motivation for the developers to start doing any kind of a work.
Yeah.
And IMS is not the kind of work you just you know, you do it just you know, let's have it. I mean, it's a huge beast over there. It's a lot of work. So you know, before diving into it, you want to be, I don't want to say sure, but at least to see there is, okay, some interest into it, right? And that's the reason why we haven't advertised it like, okay, we start doing IMS. We said, okay, let's start with the diameter, because okay, it's a quite an important part of IMS if you want to do SIP. And at the end of the day, the diameter, it's not only about IMS. I mean, you can use it also in other conjunction. I mean, like you know, next generation radius replacement. So we said, okay, let's see if we starting with this diameter support, maybe, you know, people around will get some ideas, getting some appetite in terms of IMS, and you know, while start talking about this topic, you see, you start discovering that, okay, there are maybe other people maybe, you know, interested in this and already doing work, like you mentioned, for example, like having some plans, some people looking into this and so on. So how to say, we did this diameter because first of all it's useful, but also just you know, probing around to see what's the feeling about it, and if it pays off and people are interested in doing it. I mean, the IMS part. So to continue with this.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, what I see too is there are many mobile carriers buying fixed carriers. So at some point, the platform will converge to the same thing. So it's very important to have the diameter support, because probably we're going to have to integrate with the mobile carriers somewhere in the future.
Yeah, but it's funny, Bogdan, that it kind of goes both ways, because I was talking to this guy when I was at Shlomi's office, and he was like, "Oh, I'm love OpenSIPS. We do a lot of OpenSIPS here, and I've been just starting looking at diameter support and all that." And I like, okay, you should probably talk to Liviu, perhaps. Maybe he will help you on that end. So it's good now that it's kind of convergent. So yeah.
Now it's official.
So yeah, I'll definitely hook you up, guys, with them. Seems like very nice young developers.
Thanks.
Yeah, as I said, you know, putting this IMS plans on the table, it might be how to say, a good chance to converge with other people on the plans into this.
And congratulations with your two presentations. The one for Kubernetes and this one were really nice.
He's an animal.
He's an animal.
Thank you.
Round of applause for him.
Thank you.
Good job, Liviu.
Really good presentation.
We didn't sleep for 2 weeks, man.
You know how it is. If you want to get a presentation, you need to feed pizza and Coke. I mean Coca-Cola, not anything else. And the result, it's a presentation.
You can try the other one. Maybe it will be even better.
You'll get more than a presentation.
Yeah, you'll have 10 presentations.
Depends.
You'll write everybody's presentation.
Yeah. Are you doing coding or presentation? It depends. Yeah.
Well, we will end up having Liviu like doing a completely separate, like a completely full event by itself, just with these two ingredients.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay.
Nice. Well, next year in Amsterdam.
Can't wait.
Well, last year we were a bit positive into this, too confident into this. We said, yeah, okay, for sure. In 2021 we will see you all in Amsterdam. All these plans.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop
yeah.
it. Just be quiet.
Don't
Stop it.
think next year. Don't think next year. Exactly.
Don't speak such things into our lives.
Okay, I understand. The Amsterdam passion is still how to say, high, right?
Listen,
to use the proper terms.
Yeah,
Those of us
exactly.
that are married with kids and haven't been to Amsterdam in 2 years already, it's a little much right now.
Well, you see, Vlad, he said, okay, guys, whatever you do, I'm just going by myself over there.
There's two things to notice about that. One, he's not married, and two, he doesn't have kids.
Okay. Sometimes it may be a good excuse just to go there.
I agree. So we've come to that time, folks. That's the end of our speakers for this week. And that's officially the end of our speaker list for the OpenSIPS Summit 2021 Distributed. What we're about to embark on is bringing some chaos into order. And the elected official for this is Mr. David Duffett. David, are you with us?
I am with you. I'm very pleased.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be to marshal this illustrious group. I put on LinkedIn that they were lively, but in brackets rowdy. And just look at them. You can tell that they do look a bit of a rowdy bunch. And I have some exciting news that I think we may be joined by young Matt Fredrickson from the Asterisk project, which would be a bonus. So we'll see. I believe he's making his way here electronically as we speak. But let's get the individuals that are going to be on the panel, which is, just to remind everybody, all about the symbiotic relationship between an open source software project and its community. That's our working title here. I'd like to get each panel member to introduce themselves first, so everybody knows where they stand, as it were, and then we'll begin with a little bit of conversation. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, in that case, let's kick off with Lorenzo Miniero. Pleased to have you along, Lorenzo, from the Janus project. If you'd just like to give us just 2 minutes about you and also how you got into open source in the first place, please.
Well, first of all, hi everybody. It's a pity that we don't get to meet in person. I would like to hug you, each one of you individually, but maybe we'll do that soon when it's safe, of course. Yeah, and I'm Lorenzo Miniero. I'm one of the co-founders of Miteco, a small startup that is based in the south of Italy, in Naples. And I got into open source about 15 years ago. And actually, I can see Matt just joined. Asterisk had a huge role in that at the time, because basically I started working on open source when I started working on my master thesis. So it was basically centered around standard conferencing, especially within the ITF. and we were using Asterisk as a way to hack and prototype new stuff. And basically, I started there and never stopped. So basically, that led me here eventually.
Great stuff. Thank you for that, Lorenzo. And how about you, Dan Christian Bogos?
So, hey guys, hi again. So yes, I started a long time ago, I think in 2002, working with open source. Again, one of the first projects was Asterix, and then move along through various projects. I think sometimes in 2004, 2005, I've met also OpenSIR by that time, and SIR together. So was working as a system integrator with all of this software, SEMS also, Yate and all other open source solutions. And we were actually implementing server-side solutions for customers. And it came naturally that we were looking to implement full solution, so billing was missing, and this is how CG rates came in, sometimes in 2010. Ever since, it keeps us busy. We swap the SIP world towards billing world nowadays, but still we do quite some SIP also.
Excellent. Good. Thanks for joining us, Dan. Good to have you along. And I know
Thank you for having us.
The new world of CG rates, well, the last few years, 10 years, has taken you to some very interesting locations. We don't have time to discuss it right now, but great stuff. Alan Quayle, thank you very much for joining us as well. We're pleased to have you in a slightly different position from some of the others, but we're grateful for your perspective. If you could just give us a little bit of background, please.
Sure. So I've been in sort of communications, telecoms for about 3+ decades now. In open source, the first project I was involved in was actually OpenCloud. That was, banging my head against a brick wall in terms of getting telcos to adopt open source 20 years ago, because they started shortly after Asterix. From there, I helped a number of CPaaS players. Well, before the acronym actually appeared, it was back in those days, telecom APIs. So, and of course, they're built on, many projects that we know and love, including, of course, Asterix, FreeSwitch, Elio, OpenSIPS. So I've been sort of more on the sort of implementation side, and then just general frustration out of all the bullshit that's out there on events. I founded TAD Summit with in our policy, a no BS policy. And of course, open source has been a core piece of that event since the beginning. And I'm most proud of actually with TAD Hack. So that's Telecom Application Development Hackathon. That's been running since 2014. And this year we have an open source project sponsor with Jambon. So very grateful for Dave Horton in being one of our global sponsors and helping him build up the community around what he's doing, which I think is very innovative, thought leading, and an example for many of the open source telecom projects.
Great, good. Thank you very much, Alan. And by the way, for those watching either on YouTube Live or elsewhere, do feel free to get into a live chat with any questions for these fine gentlemen. I have got questions here on the basis of this symbiotic relationship, so I've got some ready to ask. However, this is your opportunity to pose questions to these people as well. So let's come to you next, Razvan. A little bit of background from you, please.
Hey guys, I somehow joined the team from a different perspective. I was a student back then and joined the OpenSIPS team, and the SIP work got to me quite quick, and I'm glad it did, because I was around for 11 years now, and I will probably long be here. So yeah.
Good. Great stuff. Thank you, Razvan. It's good to have you along, and I know that in our background discussions you were instrumental with coming up with the nature of this panel, and we're looking forward to seeing how it all unfolds. And lastly, Matt Fredrickson from the Asterix Project, thank you so much for joining us. A little bit of behind the scenes info. This was a little bit of a last minute thing. So we're very grateful for Matt jumping on with such short notice. So good to have you along, Matt. Let's have a little bit of background from you, please. Oh, still muted, Matt.
Sorry about that. Thanks for the invite, David. Yeah, so I have worked with the Asterisk project for a very long time and worked with open source software probably longer than that. And so I'm a really big fan of open source software. I started using Linux a long time ago and then worked with Mark Spencer on Asterisk and that was, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. And so I'm just grateful to lend a little bit of perspective, I guess from my experience about how open source communities and projects work together.
Great stuff. Okay, well, thank you. So one of the first questions that we had in mind, and I'd be grateful if other people can be monitoring Slack and or YouTube for any questions that might come up there. But one of the first questions we had in mind is the expectations that there are from the project of the community. So let me couch it in these terms, please. What are the good things that you like to see from the community and that are you know, a positive part of the symbiotic relationship? And Lorenzo, if I could come to you first with that, please.
Yeah, I mean, there are many upsides when it comes to managing an open source project, and when it comes to the good aspects of the community, I guess that the first thing that comes to mind, apart of course, obviously, from the contribution standpoint, it's always nice when people contribute back. In general, any kind of feedback that the community provides is something that greatly helps shaping and improving an open source software in the first place. And I often said that it is one of the reasons why I'm very happy that we chose to open source Janus back then when we first released it, because we did have this doubt in mind. Should we go for the closed source way? Should we go for the open source way? And going for the open source way, I think, was really the best choice because, again, we received a lot of contributions from very smart people, but we also received contributions, as I said, can come in different forms and can also be just in terms of people just testing your software, finding issues, opening issues, writing documentation, even generally participating in the discussions on mailing lists and such. These are all things that one way or another definitely improve the software and basically it becomes an army that allows you to shape an open source project in ways that you most definitely could not do on your own. And so this is definitely one of the most positive aspects out there. That's that in more ways than one, you're never really alone, even if you may be the main person writing most of the code in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. The community sort of takes on a life of its own, and sometimes things can be slightly less predictable. Okay, Dan Christian Bogos, you're next to Lorenzo in my screen here. I wonder if you could give your take next.
Yeah, I have a story actually. Open source community for me looks it's more like you feel everywhere at home. So my first trip to US was I think a couple of months after the first conference we ever attended, and this was in 2013. And the project was very young, you know, there were just 2 people in the project and really unknown. So what happened is over the plane, when I was in the plane, I was sitting to some, let's say emancipated person who spilled water on my laptop. And my laptop worked for a while, but I didn't have my presentation ready. So in the morning, just before presentation, as I always do, against your advices, which I always say next time I will do it, as David said, I tried to do my presentation during the conference. What the big surprise of me is that the laptop was not starting anymore. The good part is that I had a very early community member sitting next to me, which I just met. And not only that he offered my laptop, but he typed it for me because I was not a Mac user. So this was for me my first impression about what is open source. You are everywhere at home, and really people are opening to you like knowing you forever. So if you ever are in a place where you have no sleep, just put it on the mailing list. You will for sure find someone who offers you, if not his accommodation, his friend accommodation.
That's a great story. Thank you very much for that, Dan Christian Boggart. And actually, it reminds me very briefly of how I met Mark Spencer, or how I got to know Mark Spencer better. I was presenting on the same stage as him at an event in Texas many years ago, and the venue had supplied the clicker to advance the presentation. And it failed. You know, I don't know whether it ran out of batteries or just didn't work. And Mark Spencer stepped up and offered to be my clicker. So he sat at my laptop and sort of hit the space bar when I nodded my head, and you know, we became friends through that. So similar story. Anyway, thank you for that. Alan, I'm not going to come to you just yet, because I would like to come to you at the end of this series, because you've kind of got more of a sideways perspective, I think. I'm looking forward to hear that. But let's come to you, Razvan. What kind of things do you look for from the community?
Yeah, so I'm a largely technical person, so I really love when somebody opens a good report. So something that it's a very ugly bug, probably it's very ugly bug, but he details it so well. At that point, I feel that, as Lorenzo said, I'm not alone. Somebody does understand what I'm doing. Somebody also is intrigued, but about what I'm doing, and he gets it, and he details it properly. And luckily, we do get a lot of those. Besides of that, of course, I love all the interaction that we have, both physical during OpenSIPS Summit and all the other conferences that we've been attending so far, and online. So
Great.
That's one of the big pluses.
Thank you, Razvan. And I'd like to bring in a man that needs no introduction.
I'm sure Bogdan wants to say something about this as well.
Yes, I was going to say, Bogdan's a man that needs no introduction at an OpenSIPS conference. So, Bogdan, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, David. Just as a short introduction, even you know, I got this open source virus like 20 years ago. I realized that every day I'm trying to figure out, and I discovered that actually you don't know anything, not everything about how open source works. So it's a never ending you know, process of learning. You know how an open source project should behave, because we have to say that the open source component is more than the code itself. It's not just, okay, I have a piece of code, take it, do whatever with it, eventually give me some contributions. And to answer to your question, probably most of the people do think that the community is more or less, you know, let's say, good for providing contributions. But actually, okay, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And as I see it, the community is something that has to join and walk along the actual process, the actual project, and should be involved in more or less all the aspects, like from decision making in terms of, okay, where should we go with the project? Like, okay, what should we handle? What should we address in the future development? Like we do these polls just to figure out, okay, what people would love to have in the next release, what they need to have. So that's also a contribution. The feedback in terms of how we should make the project more useful for them. And of course, then we align also our ambitions, plans, and you know, all this. But you have a feedback component from there. And then when it comes to the actual work, you know, it's also a partner, the community, and the contribution is just an aspect. But what they can do and what the community can scale in terms of doing, it's actually the testing effort. I mean, from our perspective, we will really appreciate if, you know, the community will help with the burden of actual testing and reporting, because okay, we do fixing because we know the code better, and to a certain point we don't expect people to show up with the fixes. But as Razvan said, okay, test and show up with a very, very good report. So in that case, the process of fixing will be also quite smooth. So documentation, helping other people from the community. So basically, inside community people helping one each other, or doing the testing, doing development, maybe getting involved in the planning, or like we have very active people helping with the packaging. So that's another aspect. So there are a lot of things the community can drop into and join the efforts of the overall project.
Great, thank you for that, Bogdan. And Matt, let's hear from you about your thoughts about positive community interactions and contributions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is probably a lot of what's been said, and that's, that the community really is the lifeblood of a healthy open source project, right? I mean, that's really what an open source project is at the end of the day, other than, just a hobby for somebody, right? Like, so there's a guy who's a developer and that's his hobby. I think once you extend the circle of people involved to outside of that original person, that's when you have a community, right? And that other person can be a developer, it can be a user of what you built, they can answer questions, they can contribute code, and so as a community is really that's a full participant in the project, right? Like at some level or another. It could be at developer level, or it could be user level, documentation level, it could be at testing, but they're kind of a stakeholder or an equal partner in that project, right? And that's and so once as a community member, when you feel ownership for that project as a member of that community, I think that brings a lot of power and a lot of energy into the project too, right? And
yeah,
that's really what open source allows people to do, is to feel ownership over something that that they don't really have the power to do that with the proprietary software, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you've sort of brought up in my mind is the diversity of that community, because actually it's people that are not as close to the heart of the project that can bring things out that those who are too close might not always see.
That's
and
right.
So that's a great strength. Thank you for that, Matt. Alan, I'm interested in your perspectives too, because kind of standing to the side, if you like, and looking, I'm sure you've observed very healthy communities and perhaps less healthy communities. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say from the open source telecom survey, the thing that comes through so strongly is the communities that have great ratings. It's all about the people. I mean, we've heard about you feel at home. It's because of like-minded people. So the people are key to the success of the open source communities. The other aspect that hasn't been mentioned yet, and I agree with everything that's been said, is honesty. With an open source community, you've got the core project, and there's always a dynamic tension because they have to put food on their table. So there's sometimes, with the project, there's the commercial side for the people involved, but the community keeps them honest. And I think that's a very important point. And the word that Matt used in terms of, without a community, it's a hobby. It's as simple as that. The community brings in the contributions, the code, the cache, the guidance, all the application areas in terms of roadmap, but also, I think this is a very important one, the packaging, making it as easy as possible for the newbies to get in and get, even if it's a small piece of the project, working to give them the confidence to build on from that. So, I'd come back to the two things for me. It's the people, because that creates the energy, and it's the ability for the community to keep the project honest, given the commercial realities we all face.
Yes, and when you mentioned the newbies, it struck me that growing the community is part of the vibrancy of it, because of course if it stays static, you end up in a little bit of a loop with everybody sort of doing the same thing.
Faces every time. Exactly.
Yes. Now, one of the things that's amazing about open source is the kind of people power that's in there, And although we might think of it in terms of people taking the project, the actual software in the direction that they want and adding functionality, that also happens in the actual community itself. And so the community can go off in different directions. And that's, I think, perhaps one of the things that Razvan had in mind when he was using the word symbiotic, this kind of interrelationship. So I wonder if you could give some, or the panel could give some examples of that kind of symbiosis where maybe a particular community member took something off in a direction or something unexpected happened that worked out positively. And let's go to you, Dan Christian Bogos, first to ask about that.
Yeah, well, through this diversity and different mentalities of the community which you have out there, all sort of unexpected ideas or things which you never thought about being possible, and combinations of your ideas are coming out in really unexpected ways, because there are various communities with different backgrounds and different let's say school system, which were educated in different directions. Some of them are going on studying the human nature, some of them the strict, the mathematical part, and so on. And each, they see life or they see ideas with their own eyes. So by bringing them, and most important, by listening them, by sharing things with them, you can get through this brainstorming quite some ideas, and turns up into positive direction. However, you as a community leader, you have the responsibility of driving the right way, because you can also, if you are not careful enough, you can also lose your track. So, but as you said, many times we had these unexpected ideas coming from community, and really positive ones. And we evolved over the years like a ping pong. They were saying, I think it was the Brownian movement. You never know your end story. You are like maybe a fish, or simply hitting a wall, going toward another direction, and so on. So in the end, this is how we came up. And all of this were with a lot of influence coming from the community. And to use it as a philosophical, they say, when you get married, you marry because you need a witness in your life. When you get in your life a witness on the workspace, you also need a witness. So since your wife doesn't really always understand what you are doing in your work, the best witness for you are your colleagues and your community. So you need some sort of testimony from their side to make you feel valuable. Otherwise, it's not always that you feel your value and you see it in the project.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, you make an interesting point there about the sort of meandering that can happen and the retention of the strategic goals, but being open to change, but at the same time, somebody has to be in the leadership there. Matt Fredrickson, can I come to you next and ask you about that kind of symbiotic relationship?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess just trying to take a step back and think about it. When you first release a piece of open source software, it's kind of built for your use case, right? And I think that as outside people get involved, you start to generalize it, and it becomes more useful for a lot more use cases, a lot more situations, a lot more environments. And so there's a great deal more rounding that occurs, I think, as more and more people get involved with the project, not just and so that's just from a technical, engineering what the product is perspective, but also like in how people use it. As more and more people get involved, think of different applications that you didn't originally intend for it to get involved with, that can be used for. And so I think that really is, I said it before, and I'll say it again, that the outside perspectives that other additional people in the project which I think we're calling community, is sort of the lifeblood of the project, right? Is that constant freshness of ideas that comes in and perspectives.
Yeah, one of the examples of that in the Asterisk project that comes to mind is the Asterisk documentation project that ultimately gave rise to the book, you know, because the developers are well known for not always being the most interested in documentation. And so when other people came in and did that, you know, as well as all the other things that there are in a project, bug marshalling and all that kind of stuff. But the Asterisk book is really an outcome of that documentation project from many years ago. Thank you for that one, Matt. Lorenzo, how about you? Just thinking of the word symbiosis or symbiotic within the context of your community.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I mean, what Dan and Matt said definitely makes a lot of sense for our project too. And I do remember some instances in particular, because for instance, we knew that from the very beginning that with Janus, we wanted to write something that was general purpose enough. And so something, we had our own use cases in mind, but we tried to leave it open to do a few things. But I was really surprised when I started to see how people were actually using Janus in the first place, because I still remember, for instance, the very first time that I heard of Tim Panton and its Stratford is that basically they had used Janus to basically control a powered drone and drive it around, which is something that I would never have thought ever. So, and that's something that basically it's something that they saw as a vision out of Janus in the first place. So, and that's true for many people out there. So you're constantly surprised by community members, and that basically turns into very useful feedback, which either turns into ideas that you can try and build out yourself, or in ideas or implementations that people actually contribute back to the software. Because, for instance, one of the features that we use the most ourselves for scalability and other things is called RTP forwarders, where you take a WebRTC stream and you send it somewhere else to do whatever you want with. Is something that we did never think about in the first place. It's something that a community member a few years ago thought about, contributed, and then it basically opened the door to a ton of different things that we could do with Janus in the first place. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm very grateful for the community, because they basically always contribute new ideas. They always basically shine the light on different areas and different parts of the project vision that you didn't think about, that then could actually move to different directions. And this is not strictly speaking to community members, but also people that you meet at conferences, because I mean, I'm very good friends with some people from the events also for this reason, because for instance, event handlers, which is our mechanism to basically implement monitoring for Janus streams, is actually something that was born out of a conversation that I had with Lorenzo Mangani at an OpenSIPS meeting. It's actually my very first OpenSIPS meeting. So you chat with people with the community, you start finding out about needs that you never thought about, and here and there, a couple of days later, you have something that is completely new and opens the door to a lot of interesting opportunities. So this is definitely something that I always welcome in the community in the first place.
Great, thank you. Alan, I'd like to come to you next because you used that phrase, kind of keep people honest. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yep.
The subject of the symbiotics involved.
Yeah, well, I actually see the coupling as far tighter than symbiosis. A project without a community is a repository, and it's a repository that's likely dying. I mean, we see that, for example, with Mobisense, RESTCOM. It sits there on GitHub, no contributions, becoming increasingly less relevant. I mean, the code's great. The team that created it have done amazing things, and they've exited over to Maven. So congratulations to the team. But that project, it's a repository now. So I sort of look at it as like the project team, that's the mind, and then the community, that's the heart, that's the body. As you've already indicated, they enable the the mind, that core project, to do things you could never imagine. Because they're out, with the hands, with the feet, whatever. It's a weak analogy, but I see the coupling as far tighter. And I have to agree, Tim will always take whatever you've done and use it in ways you can never imagine. In fact, I'm going to be tweeting later today. It's a sort of blast from the past, back a hack that Tim did at the first TADHack Global back in 2014. And what he did is still relevant today. So again, I think that, I agree with what someone said. I actually see it as a far tighter coupling. A project cannot survive without an active, engaged community. And as you said, David, a growing community.
Yes, very much so. Thanks, Alan. Razvan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think that although each of us have different, let's say, business-wise objectives, or each of us want to do our own business or have our own nature in business, when it comes to a project or an open source project, we all have the same goal for that project to be successful. Some of us might invest more, some might invest less because it's probably not that important for them. But as Alan said, nobody wants to have a great product, a great project that's not maintained, that's not actively, that doesn't have a community, that just stays there, has the code available, but doesn't have a community to keep it alive. So that's what keeps us alive. And the fact that we have the same goal helps us improve our projects from all the possible directions: documentation, development, explanation, and stuff like that. So,
yes, and that shared goal is kind of more generally owned as well, isn't it? I'm thinking of commercial software. You get people, commercial software vendors, trying to create user groups and grow a community, but it's very much on their terms, isn't it? Whereas when it's open source, it's kind of on everybody's terms that's involved. Bogdan, did you have anything you wanted to add on this subject?
Well, I like the analogy from done by Dan, like saying, at a certain point, the relation between the community and the product is like a marriage, just not to be alone. And going even further with this, I would say to a certain point, makes no sense to have one without the other. So to a certain point, is not possible. At least if you have like a certain size project, so not like I have a small program that I put online for people to download and that's it. So in case of a project, I can say the community and the relation between the two of them, it's like cause and effect, and or the producer and consumer. So they have to coexist together. They depend on each other, and you cannot simply take it away, because once you take one of the parts, then basically you are left with more or less nothing. As Alan said, you just either with a no purpose mass of people, either with a simple deserted repository. So you have to put them together. That's it.
That connection that you make, producer consumer, is kind of blurred, isn't it? Because somebody can come in and be a consumer of OpenSIPS and then be a producer of part of OpenSIPS, whether it's documentation or actual code.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to put the label like who's the producer and who's the consumer, because it's kind of a circular relation, relation between the two. But you cannot just produce code if nobody uses, right? And if you don't have a project, then also the community, they don't have anything to use to how to say, to get involved into, eventually to chat with the other people and so on. So they don't have an object of work.
Yes. Now, in open source, but we're describing it in kind of utopian terms, but sometimes there are difficulties and conflicts. And I wonder, in the most positive way here, what you think would be good things for the community to maybe do less of or do differently in order to be more positive in some places. And I'm going to jump into Razvan first for a comment there.
Okay. as probably as I said earlier, the idea is that we are all together in this, and probably what I would expect more, let's say, is to see that from people, see them testing more, writing the documentation more, doing better reports, and so forth. So it, it's not like for example, I do get a lot of let's say a lot of messages on Slack, for example, with something, hey, you should change this, you should change that, but that's just a simple wiki editing. You can do it as well. Why do you say I should do it? I mean, and probably one of the problems is that people don't even know they can do that. And I agree that's one big problem that has to be sorted out. And we need to educate people. That's probably that's it's hard to do. But for example, we need to identify this kind of issues in order to get them sorted out. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Razvan. Good, honest answer. Matt Fredrickson, how about you? In terms of what the community could kind of do better or differently, or maybe do less of in order to progress things nicely?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of positive and negative ways to talk about this, right? There are community members with different capabilities, like, so in terms of their starting point. So a lot of people, not everybody has capability to contribute code, right, or to work on the project at a code level. And so I think that inherently in communities, there's sometimes, in a lot of open source communities, there's sort of a push-pull between those who enthusiastically embrace the project and use the project, and those who actively maintain it from a development and from a code contribution perspective. And there's a fine balance to walk between it to handling disagreements about project direction in a respectful way, like from a communication perspective, because at the end of the day, the developers have to figure out, the people who have development capabilities have to figure out how to keep feeding their family, right? They got to keep on figuring out how to, like, bring money in and keeping their lights on and things like that. And the activities that allow them to do that don't always match up with the activities of somebody who might be using the project but not able to contribute at a development level. And so figuring out ways to respectfully disagree about things, or offering alternatives to offering alternative solutions and things like that, or alternative directions. I think there's a fine balance that you have to walk in doing that, and trying to maintain good relationships there, but at the same time realizing that your motivations are not always in alignment in terms of your what's as individuals in the community, what is driving you to contribute and things like that, and what other people want that don't have development level skills and things like that. I think that's a source I think I've seen over time working with Asterisk for a very long time. That's a source of tension that does come up, and it doesn't go away. It's an ongoing challenge, right? It's something you have to figure out how to do.
It's a very good point, Matt, and it's kind of amplified or made perhaps a little bit more difficult by a point that Dan raised, that everybody comes from different backgrounds. And so when you've got an open source project that's very international and used all over the world, you could have people coming in from certain geographies, and just simply politeness is different in some cultures than others. And some people can come across very aggressive when that might be the kind of general way that they operate in that geography. And so that can complicate things. Lorenzo, let me come to you next on this subject.
Yeah, just to turn philosophical on a second. I mean, as Schopenhauer said, like, life is like a pendulum that swings back and forth between boredom and pain. And with open source, you're definitely never bored, but the pain is there sometimes. But of course, I mean, this is just a joke. But in general, there are some challenges that we have, that as open source maintainers we have to face sometimes. which in general I ascribe to a generic, management of expectations, let's say, because of course everybody who is involved in open source, especially as consumers of an open source project, typically have their own expectations, the way that they plan to use the software and the way that they plan to give back one way or another. And of course, sometimes the feedback and the contributions you get are fine, sometimes they are not. And this goes back to what Razvan said initially. As a technical person, you would really love to have a detailed report, which sometimes doesn't happen. And the issue is not always with the person themselves. I mean, it's not that they may be lazy or exploitative in nature or anything like this, but just that the project may actually be hard to get in. And this is true for real-time multimedia application projects in general. We have to realize that the bar to basically be able to contribute at any level in the kind of projects that we are involved in is on average higher than it is in other areas. So especially in WebRTC, it's very hard to be at a level of expertise where you even are able to understand what is happening sometimes. And so that means that most often you may receive contributions or be involved in discussions that either don't make a lot of sense or are hard to address, or basically the same questions being asked over and over. And so in this, long story short, this is where I say it's a matter of managing expectations in general. And as an open source maintainer, I think I figured out that the best way to manage expectations is really not to really manage them at all. So in general, one of the upsides of the community, as we said, is that we are all in this together. And so it doesn't mean that you actually have to address yourself everything that happens within the community. A lot of questions, people will basically, the more people are invested and involved in the project, the more that they will learn, the more that they will be able to contribute back, also in terms of just helping other people in the community at the same time. And so basically, these are the main challenges that I mostly see, and one of the challenges that I struggle the most with, because I sometimes am not really happy with how I manage the community in this sense, so one way or another. So this is one of the areas where I want to improve. But in general, yeah, that's the main challenge that I see. And the way forward is basically investing in the community, because they are the best people out there to help you for sure.
Thank you. And you highlight the period of reflection that I'm sure all open source developers go through at some stage. Dan Christian Bogos, let me come to you next. What are your thoughts in this area, this sticky area of the community?
So since our community is so great, I cannot really, for most of them out there, I cannot figure out things which they should do better. But in our community, there is a very, very small slice of, let's call them unhappy or complainer all the time people, which I would expect like 3 things from them. One, they should play roles with us or switch roles with us, try to put themselves into our position. So they will figure out that they see things in a bit different way. Then they should, the second thing is they should trust us more. So we are really working here for the benefit of the project, even if they don't, sometimes they feel like we are deviating, but we are not. And the third thing, because most of the, they never, most of these complainers or unhappy people, they don't complain about our technical skills. So they don't complain much about quality of the software we produce or they consume. They most of them, they complain about things which they can do themselves. Like always, it's in our case is the documentation. We are always left behind because we are developers. The developers, they tend to prioritize their time, and documentation is always the less important on your list because you know what you have done. So you don't need the documentation to move forward. So this is why we are always behind, but we always advise on a very fast answer time on the various channels we have with the community. So we always say, please follow up our or record our advices somewhere and turn them into documentation. So next time you don't have to do this. So this would be the third advice. Put more efforts into our project. You will see, or put at least a percentage of the efforts we put in the project, put back yourself. And then you will see that everything works better.
Yeah, yes. In fact, if everybody had that avoid duplication mentality, things would kind of be a lot smoother, wouldn't they? One of the things that came to my mind when you were talking, Dan, is we tend to talk about the community as anybody that's touching the software or using it. But if somebody comes in and just uses it and then says, you should change this for my particular use case, are they really a member of the community? Or are they, you know, kind of a drive-by user? Bogdan, I'm going to come to you next. And then Alan, I'm going to come to you, but I'm going to twist the question slightly. And I want to give you some time to think about this twist. And that is, sometimes when you observe a parent and child, you sometimes see issues in the child that the parent helped create it. The parent helped to create. You can see it from a distance. I would like to come to you and ask about that kind of aspect. I'd like to come to Bogdan next about, you know, any issues you perceive.
To keep it short and technical, because as Dan and most of us over here, we have a very strong technical background, so we tend to see the whole life through this, you know, technical filter. How I see it in terms of the relation with the community is reduces to encourage as much as possible. But we have to keep in mind that that's also an effort of an extra thing that you have, but it's a long-term investment. And secondly, you have to, okay, let's not generalize, talking from my perspective. I'm looking at the, let's say, fairness of the relation in terms of each party, what are the expectations and what are the contributions. And I have to admit, in most of the cases, I tend to pay more attention in terms of, you know, let's say, helping people in the community, people who also are trying at their on their turn to contribute back. So it's not like only one direction in terms of, you know, the effort in this relation or investment in this direction, but it's more like a bidirectional relation. So that's what I call it, like a fairness. Of course, you have to start with, again, encouraging, but at a certain point you would like to get to a level where you want to see something coming back after the investment. And also on our side, we are willing to give more if we see people getting more and more involved. For example, that's the way we grow a very, very good relation with Nick Altman. He's actually taking care of all the packaging, and it wasn't like, hey, do you want to do the packaging? Yes, I do. Now it's not like this. It doesn't happen over the night. You know, it was like small steps, each party seeing exactly how it was, each party putting something extra at the moment on the table, and we have a great relation because he knows, okay, he's working on the packaging and it's helping, and also we try as much as possible also to, let's say, to compensate and help with whatever things about OpenSIPS he may have. So again, it's about fairness. So we have to understand that there is no obligation, and everything should be governed by, you know, being fair about this kind of exchange between the two parties.
Thank you, Bogdan. Yes, and just before I come to Alan, I'd just like to let you know we're over time a little bit, so I'll be coming to you each for just one closing thing afterwards. You know, anything you would like to say, what you're looking for in the community, in your communities in the coming year or something like that. But now let's come to Alan. Alan, have you observed any situations where you, from a distance, you think, well, that could have been handled a little bit better? You don't have to name names, by the way.
I'm not going to name names, and I think education, as Razvan mentioned, I think is very important. And it also touches on what Lorenzo was saying, is actually a lot of community members do not feel competent enough to contribute code. Because if you thought SIP was complex, let's have a look at WebRTC. But I think as a culture within all the open source communities, treating a documentation contribution as equally as important as code contribution, I think would greatly help and encourage a lot more members of the community to contribute on the documentation side. So I think it's back to this education, but I think it's also how you value. It's like, oh, thanks for the documentation. You know, it's the same respect, the same joy you see with a code sort of contribution that gets included in the project. Same joy we should see when a documentation contribution gets included, so that we can just stop people complaining about they're always going to complain about the documentation. But I would say, you know, from the open source survey, that's like the top one.
Okay, yes, thank you. And one of the words we hear very often in open source is meritocracy. And of course, it's extending the bounds of that meritocracy beyond just the code, isn't it?
Exactly. That's critical.
The other things. Okay, thank you for that, Alan. Let me come back to you, Lorenzo, and ask, what are you looking forward to over the coming year? What would you like to see more of from your community? Or is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
No, I mean, in general, I'm very happy with the community, even though I want to echo what Bogdan said, because I think it's very important. So the fairness of the exchanges is definitely of paramount importance, and one of the things that we struggled with personally the most in our own community groups, for instance. And so something that we are trying to encourage, and something that I hope will take foot in the next year or so. And of course, it is indeed challenging, because especially at the beginning, as Alan said again, you may not be actually competent enough to contribute anything. So even if you want it, you may not be able to actually help other people in the community, in groups, questions. So of course, at the beginning, you will most definitely be on the receiving side of things for most of your involvement. But what I really hope will happen is that people involved in the community will not just be there for the time that they need the project, take whatever they can, and then disappear when they don't need you anymore, but possibly stay a little longer, but possibly take what they learned and use it to help others. That's what I really would hope for the future. But again, this is just aspiring for the best. I mean, I think we are already in a good enough shape. I mean, because all of our projects are very popular, and I'm sure that most of our communities are very healthy. And then, as Dan said, most of the community is great anyway. You end up with some jerks anyway. You end up with some people that are too lazy to do some things on their own. But most of the times, the interactions are great and really worth the trouble.
Thank you. And you reminded me actually of Zafrir from Zorcom, the company, because Zafrir was a guy who contributed both to Asterisk and to Debian, well beyond any kind of vested interest there was in anything he could obtain from it. And I remember once going around the Zorcom establishment in Israel and Iran, the CEO said, "There's Zafrir." He said, "We pay him, but we don't really know what he does, because he's kind of just busy contributing back to other projects." And that was an example of that. Okay, Razvan, let me come back to you and ask you for some closing thoughts.
I will go with the cliche: help us help you. Although this does seem like a cliche, it's quite true, because the more thing you do, even though they are little, we might not know how to do it. That's why we encourage you doing it. For example, the packaging, we might not know how to do better packaging, and as long as you do it, you would offer us more time and energy to help you with things that we really know, and let's say you have less information about.
Great, thank you. And I'll jump from you to Bogdan in case you'd like to add anything there.
I would say, in terms of what I would see as a critical aspect of this relation, it's actually something critical in any kind of relation. It's to improve the communication between the two sides, because we have the feeling that maybe in some cases we do not communicate enough, so we do not expose the plans or the intentions or whatever we want to do. In the same time, we have the feeling that we don't maybe get enough feedback, you know. So that's why I'm saying, to indicate what kind of area of interest for the community in terms of contribution should be and so on. So it doesn't really matter what kind of communication, but it should be a stronger communication in both directions between the party. That's something that I would love to see, at least in our project. I'm not sure if it's a particular case or if it's something, let's say, typical to the open source projects. I'm not sure, but in our case, that's again something that I would like to see is improved.
Right. Great stuff. Thank you. And Matt Fredrickson, let's hear from you.
Hey, we have a really great community with the Astros project, and so it's really hard to critique any parts of it that may be lacking. I think we've come a long way, but I think the foundation of that is probably a lot of it is a focus on an emphasis on respectful and empathetic conversation, right? So not having a superiority mindset, I guess, from somebody answering a question to somebody who's asking a question, and trying to sincerely, assume the best in terms of what somebody's asking about or requesting, and then from the requester side to make sure that you're empathetic to the person that's trying to help you and that they're sacrificing their time to be able to do so, right? And bear that in mind. And I think that as long as you can foster that type of, particularly as leaders of open source projects, that you can foster that kind of communication, that you really build a community that people want to be in and around.
Great thoughts. Okay, Dan Christian Bogos, any closing thoughts from you, sir?
Yes, so I would hope in the future for more, like Bogdan was saying, more communication and involvement from both parties. So we have to do more steps towards them, and they have to do more steps towards us. And yeah, exactly, getting closer, because as we discussed here, there is no one side without the other. There were many good projects there dying without a community there. And I forgot to mention a very important part of our community, our ambassadors. So we have people who worked in different companies and still staying with us and bringing us to different companies. So this was actually, they put us on top of their employer because we were having more connection to them as their employer was having. So I would like to stay on positive side and thank all of these guys for being there.
Great stuff. Good. And any closing thoughts from you, Alan Quayle?
Yeah, just quick future trend that's happening. As always, it's just how distributed it is the importance of owning your own tech. That is, owning your customer experience, owning your roadmap. Now, for a few companies that can raise hundreds of millions of dollars like Twilio, they can own their own tech. For the rest of us, open source is the answer. And it takes years to build a company that can use open source effectively. But there's lots of them out there, lots of system integrators, lots of members of your community. And one trend we're seeing are some of the larger established companies like Gamma buying Mission Labs, because they realize they can't take the time or have the culture to build an organization that can use open source effectively, but they can buy it in. I think this is a trend we're going to see more and more over the coming years, which is great for all your communities in terms of driving greater usage, greater economic impact, and of course, greater engagement as you bring more people into using those projects. That's a trend that I hope you agree with in terms of ensuring the success of open source.
Great. Thank you very much, Alan. And before I hand back to our illustrious MC, Alex, for him to bring things to a close and to give away the exciting backpack as well, I do want to thank each of you panel participants, but not only for participating in the panel, but what you represent and what the gift that you give to the world through what you do. So thank you very much to all of you.
And of course, thank you, David, for doing such a great work in moderating and pushing the right buttons and trying to pull the truth from us.
I'm privileged to participate. Thank you very much.
I must say, David, I'm extremely impressed. I really thought there would be blood on the screens. You've done a great job haranguing these guys. to all the speakers in the panel here, thank you so much. This was amazing. It's a great benefit to all of us to really try to understand what it's like from the community side and what the challenges are that you guys go through. I think it's important that that was brought to light, and hopefully there's a little bit more understanding from the community side as to, you know, how to deal with those challenges. All right, so that, folks, is the end of our content version of the 2021 OpenSIPS Summit Distributed. Again, I want to remind everybody that next week there are going to be some workshops and, of course, the OpenSIPS training. So for all of you that are eager, for all of the coders out there that are excited to learn some more stuff and actually get some hands-on experience, make sure that you show up on Monday for all of those workshops. I also want to thank again our sponsor, Subspace, for being so generous and backing us through this entire week of presentations and great content. Bogdan, do you have any closing thoughts before we actually move over to our prize?
Well, I remember the discussion that we had in the very beginning. Actually, it wasn't during today about you know, how the future should be, of the event should be. Like, okay, are we ready to go again to Amsterdam to have fun, or you know, we will be forced for a third year to stay you know, online, because I have to admit, even if all this kind of online conferencing, you know, live and seeing a lot of people gives you some advantages over, we still lack the socializing, the actual interaction between the people. You know, like Max is trying here to, you know, to start our appetite with his beer. But it's it will be more fun actually to, you know, to share that the idea of drinking a beer, not necessarily he can. And you know, the discussions and all this how to say brainstorming and you know, friendly relations between the people outside the context of you know, of what we are doing and so on. That's a big part that it's actually missing. So I hope that next year we will be able to do something like in-person event. Nevertheless, the 2021 was, in my opinion, a great event, and it's not because, you know, it's an event we do. It's more or less the value of the event. It's about the speakers and the participants, and I'm really glad that you know, we had so many you know, speakers actually joining and providing value for our participants. So overall, thank you all for contributing from both parts. You know, great audience, great speakers, and you have a special place in this kind of speaker group, Alex, for being, you know, our magnificent MC again. So great! Thank you for doing this and yeah, leading the whole event. And
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yep. And also thanks to Max for doing such a great work, even if you know, most of the people do not realize what he's doing, but he's taking care of all the broadcasting on YouTube, so a lot of technical things. But at the end of the day, are the things, you know, bringing the whole content and what we are talking here for the masses. So that's his support, and thank you, Max, again for doing this.
Thank you, Max. By the way, it should be mentioned that Max's work doesn't end with the conference.
Thank you,
He does
Max.
a lot of post-production. and he makes sure that all of this content makes it to all of you on the OpenSIPS YouTube channel. So be looking for all the recordings. Obviously, Max, it takes you a little time. We thank you again for everything that you do, man. We couldn't have done it without you.
Yeah, well, everyone watching should hit the subscription button somewhere out there.
There we go. That's a great way to motivate and incentivize Max to get these done earlier. Everybody, hit the subscribe button, or hit the subscribe button.
If you will watch later all the YouTube recordings from the OpenSIPS channel from the summit, you will see, in the lower right corner there is a small logo like a pipe, Maxim Sobolev.
Not only does Max do everything that you already mentioned, Alex, but he somehow finds time to control the Zoom facility on his camera as well.
Well, I think that he's actually been implementing some AI this year. He's connected it to my my motion sickness monitor, and when it seems that I'm starting to feel just a little bit better, he kicks it in.
Yeah, just to keep you on your toes. So you don't fall asleep.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping me awake.
So, should we move on with the big prize? Come on.
I think so. Where's Mr. Liviu? There he is.
I'm here. By the
Liviu,
way, I'll do some of my own take on what Alan and what his last comment was regarding, or rather second to last. He said that we should value documentation exactly as much as code, right? But we already do that. In fact, each line of documentation you contribute counts exactly as one line of code. So just go out there and fix the docs, and you will be, you can beat even Max, get on top of Max and take number 2 on the top contributors, no problem. And also, documentation contributors get a special place because they also get mentioned on a separate section, which is only reserved for people who write documentation. So developers don't get that. Yeah, that's.
Thanks for pointing that out, Liviu.
Yeah, you too can.
So your name is now somewhere in Arctic. Was that Arctic code, or what Microsoft marketing stand was? It was like 2 years.
Oh, Arctic contributor on GitHub, right? Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it basically means whoever gets his name there, it's written somewhere on some tapes or whatever they do these days.
Okay.
Liviu, where's that picker?
Thank you for your attention. Now let me get to the real interest.
Okay.
What was it?
So I just want to make this clear, folks. Yesterday, we actually had a scenario where we gave out a couple of prizes on a single drawing. That was because we felt bad for the people that just weren't quite ready when their name was chosen. Unfortunately, today, we can't have such a luxury. And because of the prizes, and especially the grand prize, there only being one, there are no points for second place today. So if you do not call out to us on the Slack channel that you are there, we will pick again, and you will lose the prize.
Alex, what timeout are you putting on this? Is it 5 seconds? Is it 10 seconds?
Again, I'll go back to my original comments. That discretion lies solely with me.
Okay.
When I've had enough of waiting, I think we'll move to the next one. But I usually get a sense of the crowd. I get the eagerness.
I think you're a fair hand, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you. And if by chance I do need any help, I will go to my fellow speakers and contributors here for a second opinion. And with that being said, Bogdan, do you want to let us know about our illustrious prizes today?
Surprise, there are no prizes. No, just a joke, a bad joke. Yeah, so we start with a t-shirt with the OpenSIPS 2021, and then we will move on with a big prize. But let's see who's the lucky winner of the t-shirt this
let's start the drum roll.
Yep.
All right, Richard Lyman.
Richard, are you with us?
They should be.
Type, say something.
Say something, Richard.
No, we want from Richard.
Yeah.
I can feel Alex's discretionary timer ticking away.
I'm still
Richard. All right, Richard, I'm very sorry. Liviu, warm her up.
Liviu, maybe just let's post on the channel the fact that we move on, so we don't have the situation like yesterday when we had like 2 winners just because the first was not clear that not presenting, he actually lost. So
you're buying time for Richard. I know exactly.
Now we're developing protocol. Like, I need to post.
Time's up.
Okay.
Maybe next time, Liviu, the picker can automatically delete its post on the Slack channel after 10 seconds.
Oh, he's typing. Oh, okay.
No. Okay, time is up, right? Yeah, it's just like Adam is saying that there is the delay, but
you have to be in the channel anyway. It doesn't matter.
You have to be on both.
Channel.
Let's go, Liviu.
Yep. Let's go.
Sorry.
Jasper, are you here?
Let's go.
Jasper. A word, a letter, a number, some character.
An emoji.
Jasper, where are you? Jasper?
I'm just typing now.
Bad time for a bathroom break, Jasper. Bad time.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going.
Time is up. Time is up.
Dude, I need another shot, so.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Okay, I think it's fair enough.
Yes, it is.
Time is up.
We're giving away t-shirt, folks. It's gonna happen this time.
Federico Edorna.
Federico! You are here. I know you are. I feel your breath.
Oh yeah.
Federico! All right! Well done.
Type it. Hit enter. Okay. The emoji.
Unfortunately, I got to go, and because I'm very late, and I say hello to you all, and I really got to go.
Ciao,
Giovanni.
Bye, Giovanni.
Ciao.
Thank you for
Bye.
everything.
Bye.
Okay.
Okie dokie. So
forward.
The big prize, folks.
No.
Somebody's putting their laptop in this thing.
Yep.
Is
So
it one more clinics or no?
no. Today we have the backpack.
Grand prize.
Yep, the big prize. I'm just.
Backpack. You can go
I'm
without
hopeful.
clinic.
I'm hopeful.
Here we go.
Okay, this is it. Let's see. Adam Jeffrey. Did he
Adam
win something?
Jeffrey, are you
Is it
here?
the other guy?
But I think he missed it, or
Yeah. Well, I guess he got
second chance. You know.
Adam is typing.
He's there.
Yeah.
No. I mean, if he he's here. He's
Not the
here.
same. Yeah.
Is that
No,
Adam
no.
Jeffrey? No, it's a different Adam.
No, he's
No
typing.
way.
No way!
Yay!
That's it! Well done.
Nice. It is fair. Like he was picked on some other day and lost the T-shirt, so now karma is coming back.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, for all you prize winners, make sure that you get with the OpenSIPS team so that you can get sized and we can get an address for you.
Yep, we will be contacting and gathering information for delivery. In the same time, information we will get in touch with those who won the design clinics in order to schedule. That's about the prices. In the same time, let me share with you quickly before more or less closing what's left for next week. As Alex mentioned, now we are closing the conferencing part of the summit. Still, we have some other, let's say, activities for the next week. On Monday, we have over here some great workshops. We will upload the conference room so everyone can join directly into the conference, so it will not be via YouTube or anything like this in terms of feedback. You will be able to join directly to the Google conference. Again, we will share on the Slack and on the social media the link to the conference room. Feel free to join. We have again 4 nice workshops for Monday, and for the last day, for Tuesday, we have the OpenSIPS training. So these are the activities that we were gonna have next week. Otherwise, again, with many thanks to our great speakers, the conferencing part got to the end.
Let's give the audience a round of applause. You
Yeah,
guys were great
that's
with all
for the
your
audience.
questions. Thanks for joining us. And I believe is there an after party? Was there an after party?
Yeah, the link has already been put on the YouTube live chat for the.
Okay, excellent. So for all of you that want to join any speakers and organizers that are left after the conference is done here in a few minutes, feel free to click the link. I think it's that side or that side. I know it's not down there, but the subscribe link is down there.
No, the bar is in that direction.
So again, from all of us here at OpenSIPS, for all of the speakers, all of the moderators, everybody that made this possible, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate you attending, and we hopefully will see you in 2022 in the beautiful town of Amsterdam.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
So be it.
Thank you especially to Lorenzo. It's his dinner time. It's quite late for him. So thanks to
he went for
thank you.
Lunch.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Join us at the after party if you can make it. Have
Yep,
a wonderful
let's move
rest
over
of the
there.
year.
Oh,
Have a great day.
Cheers.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
one.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye bye.